All right, good evening, everybody. It's October 20th. If you joined me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. We do have one absent council member who is expected any moment soon, Andy Rayum. I've not heard from Tom Agnew, so maybe he'll show up at some point. City Manager, did you hear from him?
I've heard from Councilmember Agnew, who I don't believe will be present this evening.
He will be?
No, will not.
Will not, okay.
I have not heard from Councilmember Rayum.
Okay, he just texted me, said he's just running a few minutes late. Dealing with the hot lanes, maybe here from Redmond. We'll see. So, meeting agenda approval. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read through. Any changes, additions, subtractions? Councilmember Sandberg?
I'd like to pull Agenda Bill 15149, the approval of the contract for new keycard and video surveillance system, from the consent agenda.
Okay.
And I'd like to add 15 minutes to our discussion on the storm and surface water master plan update.
Okay, for a total of 30.
Yes.
Okay. I have no objections. Anyone else? Any other changes? How about on the projected agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we do have a special presentation this evening from Community Transit. We're joined by Emmett Heath, which is the CEO for Community Transit. Mr. Heath, thank you so much for coming up and visiting Bothell.
Well, thank you all very much for allowing my colleague Todd Morrow and myself to come down and share some thoughts with you this evening. I have about 10 minutes of prepared comments. Before I move on to the prepared comments, just a couple of things about our relationship with Bothell that I wanted to mention. Just earlier this afternoon, by coincidence, I countersigned a contract that Mr. Stowe had signed earlier that continues the commute trip reduction contract between Community Transit and Bothell. And I noted in the staff comment it's 23 years of partnership between the City of Bothell and Community Transit to manage your commute trip reduction obligations under state law. I thought it was interesting. Two of our premier programs for commute trip reduction include our Curb the Congestion and Choice Connections programs. It was interesting to note that those two programs this year have eliminated 600,000 drive-alone trips in Snohomish County, and 108,000 of those were within the City of Bothell. That reduction in single-occupant vehicle trips avoided burning 363,000 gallons of gasoline. It avoided 7 million pounds of CO2 being emitted into the air of Snohomish County. So I thought it was pretty impressive that that 23-year-long partnership with the City of Bothell pays back those kinds of dividends to everyone in Snohomish County. Also noticed our van pool program is about 400 vehicles strong. It's one of the largest in the nation, and almost 20% of those van pools either originate or their destination is in the City of Bothell. So you're among our largest partners when it comes to van pools as a transportation choice. And lastly, when Todd and I drove down tonight, we came by McMenamins. Has to be the media hog of the whole region for the last 2 weeks. Congratulations to you all, not only on opening McMenamins, but you've had a long, successful run of development in Bothell that's grabbed a lot of attention, and especially with our own service planners are very impressed with what you've done down here, including the transit orientation to some of those developments.
Thank you so much.
So Todd and I are here this afternoon to talk about what we're doing for citizens in Snohomish County. For a lot of people, public transportation is simply a way to get from point A to point B. But our message for this afternoon is that public transit investments help the economy grow, and they help preserve the quality of life in our region. At Community Transit, we exist to serve the needs of the people in Snohomish County, and every year that mission expands as more and more people move to our cities and towns. We've seen almost unprecedented growth recently. Everyone sees the physical landscape changing around them. You witness that in construction sites, cement trucks, new retail developments. Like I just mentioned, the City of Bothell must be leading the way in new developments. And that same growth that you're experiencing here in Bothell, we're experiencing across Snohomish County, and that means we're experiencing that growth at community transit as well. The Puget Sound Regional Council is forecasting that by 2040, Snohomish County will increase by 240,000 residents. It will also increase by 130,000 jobs. I think that statistic about 240,000 more people is amazing. To think of just breaking that down, 10,000 new citizens in the county this year and next year and the year after and every year for the next 24 years out to 2040. In each of the last 2 years, Snohomish County has added about 3,500 housing units a year. And there are already about 3,600 housing units on tap for 2016 and 4,000 more on tap for 2017. We've been getting smarter about the way our county grows. In the last 3 years, more than 1,600 residential units have been constructed or permitted along major transit corridors. The slide on display is a transit-oriented development project that's located by our just north of our Ashway park and ride lot north of Linwood. This is the type of development that helps reduce cars on the roads. It reduces vehicle miles traveled across the county. And this is an example of an investment that helps preserve the quality of life in our region. But still, I mean, the county continues to grow, and we need to continue to make these kind of investments to manage the continuing growth. We remain a strong manufacturing economy. Boeing continues to be a big driver of local jobs and important to our local economy, but we're also adding jobs, as you know, in other sectors such as high-tech, healthcare, business services, and tourism. We know that Bothell is committed to retaining its character and its high quality of life. We also understand that you're growing just like we are and the rest of the county. Your city's current population is about 41,000, and you're expected to grow to more than 55,000 by 2035. About 40% of that population, about 50% of all that new growth, is estimated to be in Snohomish County. I'm sure that this council spends a lot of time considering how you're going to deal with growth, and we've been wrestling with that growth issue countywide and in your city as well. On a busy day, about 40,000 people ride our community transit service, our fixed route buses, our van pools, our paratransit dial-a-ride service. 40,000 riders a day. It's about equivalent to the entire population of Bothell riding one of our services every day of the week. People take a lot of pride in our local public transit system, and we take a lot of pride in being the service provider that 41,000 people a day use. This is an interesting graphic. We try to make it easy for all the citizens of Snohomish County to use our public transportation. Countywide, about 47% of residents live within a quarter mile of a bus stop. That makes it easy for them to access our public transit. About 75% of all the jobs in Snohomish County are within an easy walk of our existing public transit service. In your city, about 43%, and that's what's displayed on this map. If you look at the green areas around the blue lines, about 43% of your residents live within walking distance of an existing bus stop. Almost 900 people a day board our buses on 51 stops within your city limits. We have a pretty robust level of public transportation service within and through your Bothell city limits. So clearly, the service that we provide to Bothell is important in enhancing our transit service, and it's an important part of helping to manage the growth that will occur in your city. I'd like to share with you a little story about what we consider a transit success, a story that we've retold within community transit a lot here recently. Part of the Great Recession, we cut back a fair amount of our service to reestablish an affordable cost structure. Part of the service that was cut was to eliminate our Sunday and major holiday service. In June of this year, we brought Sunday service back after a 5-year hiatus. And on that very first Sunday, our scheduling supervisor wanted to witness the first person to to get on the first trip on that first Sunday of restored service. So that supervisor went down to the Aurora Village Transit Center to watch the 6:04 a.m. trip board. The first person that he saw board that bus was a young woman wearing an Arby's uniform. And we have to believe she was probably on her way to work at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And internally we're saying, we don't know how she got to work the 5 years before that. But we took a lot of pride that on that very first day at 6 o'clock in the morning, she was there to use our service to get to her job on a Sunday morning. And it just felt good to know that we were able to restore that kind of service, not only for access to jobs, but for all of the other reasons that Sunday service was so important to our customers. A few weeks ago, Todd and I were in Marysville talking with the city council up there, and after the presentation, one of their council members commented that his business is along one of our bus routes. The routes 201, 202 in Marysville are among the most heavily traveled pair of routes in our entire Snohomish County system. And this council member was saying how important it was for his employees and his customers to have frequent, reliable transit service to get to and from the business. That pair of routes in Marysville runs pretty close to every 15 minutes all day long, which is a level of service that allows most customers to throw the schedule away. Doesn't make any difference if you miss the last bus. You're only you're just a few minutes early for the next bus. The point that we took away from that was that whether you ride the bus every day or not, it is in all of our interest that our transit service allows people easy access to their jobs and customers easy access to businesses. So what's the biggest challenge that community transit is facing right now? It is unserved demand that we're not able to serve within our current revenues. Population growth and employment growth and a healthy economy are driving lots of new people to public transit. Every bus that we own, every coach operator that we employ is presently deployed in regular service. Last year our ridership increased 8%, and this year it's continuing to increase. An example of that, and I'll come to the slide that's on display in a moment, an example of that is our commuter service to Seattle. The buses, the popular commuter service trips to Seattle and the University of Washington on a daily basis fill up at almost the very first stop. Even our double-tall buses. Double-tall bus can seat almost 88 people. If you fill the aisles, about 110 people seated and standing in a double-tall bus. And that commute from Everett to Seattle it is not unusual anymore that that's an 80-minute trip. I'm born and raised in this region. I remember when that was a 16-minute trip. I had to speed a little bit, but at 80 miles an hour from Everett to Seattle, that was a 16-minute trip. And for most of the people in this room, I suspect at some point it was a 20-minute trip. Now 80 is not unusual, and 90 happens fairly regularly. And those people are standing start to finish during that 90-minute ride from Everett to Seattle. And every morning we see more and more and more people coming to ride the service. So what you're looking at here is a snapshot from an onboard camera. This is a Route 412 bus from McCollum Park at 128th South to Seattle. First couple of trips in the morning are always full. People would fill the seats, fill the aisles. We would pull away and literally leave people standing at the curb waiting for the next bus to arrive. Now, this is about a year ago, and fortunately at that time we still had some resources that we were able to shuffle around. We added some additional trips to this route, a couple of additional trips to other routes, but at that point we were out of buses, out of coach operators, and out of additional revenue to serve the continually growing demand. You may have read recently that we just invested $2 million just in what we call schedule reliability. That's adding time to existing routes that are being slowed down by congestion. So all we're able to do is maintain schedule reliability. Our resources are being consumed because of congestion, and we're not able to deploy them to new routes, to unserved or underserved markets, meet the requests that we have from new customers and new businesses all the time for additional services. So overall, we are just stretched beyond our means to provide that service. And I think I'd like to interject off script at that point and say that the system that we operate today is financially stable, it's financially sustainable. We are operationally sustainable into the long-term future. We're not financially strained. We have a proposition going to the voters to seek funding for expansion in the future. That is entirely to serve new demand and to provide expanded service. Has nothing to do with continuing to operate the services that we operate today. We're thankful that we have an opportunity to make investments to grow our transit service. You will recall in July, Governor Inslee signed a new law, the new state transportation funding package, that included authority for community transit to seek new funding. The day after that, our board of directors took a unanimous action to place that measure on the November ballot to increase transit service. That ballot will be on the November 3rd, for a vote on November 3rd as Proposition 1. And I would mention, too, regarding our board of directors, we are governed by a federated board of directors. The small, medium, and large cities from throughout Snohomish County elect delegates to come and serve on our board of directors. So we have a cross-section of elected officials from virtually all the small, medium, and large cities within Snohomish County, with the exception of Everett. And their vote was unanimous to send this proposition to the ballot so voters could have a choice whether they want to fund expanded service. If that proposition is approved, it would enable us to add additional buses to downtown and to the University District in those peak commute markets. We'd also be able to add buses and van pools across our entire service area, including, importantly, in the south part of the county, more east-west connections. We have a more fully developed north-south route structure. What we need to do in the future is expand the east-west connectivity to the major north-south trunk lines that have developed, and the ones we'll see develop in the future when Link Light Rail gets to Linwood in 2023 and Everett thereafter as part of SG3. Another feature you'll see early if Proposition 1 is approved is that we would hopefully by March of 2016 be able to put our first service improvements on the road. Now, since we don't have more buses and we don't have more operators, the kind of things we can do immediately include starting earlier in the morning, which is a request we hear frequently from early birds who need to get down to Seattle. So start earlier, end later. We can add more midday trips, and we can add more Saturday, Sunday, and holiday trips. And those are the kinds of things we would plan to do almost immediately in early 2016. Thereafter, we'd consult with citizens. We would take service expansion plans to citizens, ask for input. And once we finalize those plans, we'd acquire buses, hire operators, and significantly begin to expand the system by September of 2016 and then periodically thereafter. The slide on display now is it's an illustration of how we might add routes to serve what I have referred to as underserved or unserved markets. This particular example is an example from Marysville in the north of a route that would go out to Highway 9, south on Highway 9 through Lake Stevens, Snohomish, down through Cathcart, back across 132nd to the I-5 corridor. This is something we have wanted to do for a long time. Marysville has been interested, as have Lake Stevens and Snohomish, all of whom serve on our board of directors. We have not had the resources to respond to this kind of new route request in the immediate past. The information that we've been distributing to explain Proposition 1 to our voters describes more trips to more places more often. That means more buses traveling to more destinations, more hours of the day. That may sound like a chicken in every pot or spreading peanut butter as a service expansion plan. 0.3% in sales tax is $33 a year for the average citizen. And for that $33 a year average contribution, we think we can demonstrate significant transit expansion across the entire county. So I'm nearly through with these prepared comments, but a couple of more things I want to share with you. And that returns us to our message of the transit investments that we want to make, helping the economy grow and helping to protect the quality of life. Those are the lofty goals we're pursuing with transit expansion. The slide is a picture of our Swift bus rapid transit service. In our morning peak hours, about 80% of all of our ridership are on their way to work, heading to a job, earning a paycheck, paying taxes. Those are the kinds of things that help stabilize the economy and grow the economy. In the afternoon, those 80% of our riders are on their way home. Perhaps, getting home to a Little League game, maybe sitting on the porch, maybe just relaxing. But the point that we take away from that is the importance of our service to get people to work and bring them home. A couple of other statistics that I find very compelling. About 40% of the residents of Snohomish County who commute to Seattle do so on public transit. And the AM peak on I-5 southbound at the county line, 25% of the people going across that line do so in 1% of the vehicles, and those are public transit vehicles. A lot of people use transit, and that's where they find their value. If 25% of the people are going across that county line in 1% of the vehicles, what does that say to the general purpose lanes? What would the general purpose lanes be like if those folks were in single occupant vehicles? And I think that really illustrates and helps make the case that public transit investments help everyone in the region, not just the people for whom public transit makes a good choice. So we have the opportunity to ensure that our future here in Bothell and Snohomish County is just as amazing as the community that we live in today. We at Community Transit know the investments that we need to make. We know how to do it. We know what those investments should be. We hear all the time from people in the county. They'll see one of our blue and white buses go by, and we'll hear people express their pride that we are a locally governed public transit system. They're proud of that, and we are proud of that. And we're confident that we are in a position through expanding our public transit offerings to do our part to stabilize the economy, help the economy grow, preserve the quality of life, and that's our main purpose for being here tonight, is to share that message. And I'm through with prepared comments, and more than happy to answer any questions you might have about our services.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thanks a lot for coming tonight and for sharing about that. I appreciate your remarks, and I do feel that in the entire community transit system, I think Bothell could use more investment. I think that we're one of the cities that provide a lot of people who work in Snohomish County, and I think that Bothell, I think a lot of communities are extremely well served by community transit. I would be curious to know what your specific plans are for the city of Bothell and whether you plan on having expansion. I think what you guys do in terms of BRT, in terms of van pools, is fantastic. And I will say that I literally have never ridden community transit in my entire life, but I know people who work for your agency. And I think that, as you said, a strong transit system is something that helps everybody. My job when I was using public transit was in King County, and that was where I got my public transit for. But I think that everybody at every stage of life should have an opportunity to be able to have a reliable and affordable way to get to their job or to get the things that they want to do, whether or not they have regular access to a motor vehicle. So I think you guys do incredibly important work, and I know just from the citizens of Bothell, and particularly those in the Snohomish County side, what your plan, and I thought you did a very judicious job too. I've sat on this council for 12 years, and I've heard many people come in with much more rah-rah to their pitch prior to an election where there's a voting thing. But I appreciate how thoughtful and deliberate you were in your presentation. But I would be interested, if this were to pass, how would service for people in the city of Bothell be different than it is today? Well,
a few things. I think there were several questions and comments there. I think it's important that in some recent polling, about 91% of the citizens in Snohomish County indicated that they felt favorably or very favorably about the services that we were providing. The first thing Bothell gets is a continuation of the kinds of things that we are doing now. I've mentioned some of those, the CTR partnership, the routes that are here. I think a feature of what Bothell gets as part of Proposition 1 is a second line of SWIFT. SWIFT is our brand name for bus rapid transit. Bus rapid transit is the mode that we use. You saw pictures of our bus rapid transit vehicles to provide what the region has termed high-capacity transit. In this region, when people talk high-capacity transit, they're usually talking about Sound Transit and Link Light Rail. Bus rapid transit is also high-capacity transit. It carries a lot of passengers. It runs frequently, like every 10 minutes. It has limited stops, so the time from origin to destination over a long route is much faster. It actually emulates train service at a fraction of the cost, can be delivered in 4 years instead of 10 plus, at a fraction of the cost. So BRT, as part of Proposition 1, we are well along in the design phase to add a second line of SWIFT, which would originate at the Canyon Park Park and Ride, north up the Bothell Everett Highway, across 128th to Airport Road, and north to Boeing. It would terminate literally at the front gate of the Boeing plant. There's about 65,000 manufacturing jobs in the Boeing Manufacturing Industrial Center. There's about 25,000 jobs around the Painfield Canyon Park High-Tech Center. There's 90,000 jobs at both ends, high-density residential and commercial in between. We think SWIFT 2 will provide a significant advantage to the citizens of Bothell. The people who are using it to access Bothell, the people in Bothell who are using it to access points north, including the big employment centers. So SWIFT is a centerpiece. Beyond that, I think it would be an expansion of existing routes, increasing trips, increasing the frequency of service, starting earlier in the day, ending later in the day. And there's the potential of adding new routes, but we're not being specific about adding new routes until after we have been out in the community and gotten input from citizens about where we can make those investments, put that money to the highest and best use.
Thanks for your answer, and thanks for the work that you do.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Sember.
A couple questions, and thank you for your presentation. First of all, the citizens in the Snohomish County end have been talking about the capacity of the Canyon Park Park and Ride,
Right.
and that it's full every morning prior to 7 a.m. And can you talk a little bit about how this expansion could help ease congestion at that Park and Ride?
You know, the park and ride, the parking issue, I think for an awful lot of people, the first thought is, well, let's build more parking stalls, more park and rides, bigger parking rides, structures like at the Mount Lake Terrace Transit Center. Right now, it costs us between $30,000 and $50,000 a stall to construct new parking. Our belief is we are not going to build our way out of those kinds of parking issues by adding stalls. I think the longer range solution that we believe is the right solution is to infill our fixed route service. So there's enough routes with enough frequency and enough connectivity that more people can access the high capacity trunk lines without having to drive a car to a park and ride. Earlier today we were talking about the Linwood Transit Center. Light rail will get to Linwood Transit Center in 2023. Right now there's a little over 1,000 parking stalls at the Linwood Transit Center. And it serves about 4,000 riders a day. Estimates are when Sound Transit gets there, there will be 20,000 trips a day out of the Link Light Rail Station. Well, you think about, we're not going to build 20,000 stalls for people to park there. What we're going to need is to reconfigure our system between now and 2023, especially in South County, so that it becomes an effective feeder system to get people to those trunk lines without them having to think, oh, I need to get in my car and drive to a park and ride. So the longer range and the more important solution is more urbanized transit system that has more frequency and more connections, so people can use a bike, they can walk, they can use local transit to get to a high-capacity line.
And then it sounds like van pools are pretty successful within community transit and highly used within Bothell. So how will this funding package affect van pools? It'll just increase more, so whoever wants to use van pools will be able to access that?
We're not constrained right now for the number of people who want to use van pools. We just expanded the program by 20 vans. That was our estimate of the additional vehicles it would take to meet the existing demand for van pools. Van pool is a very efficient operation for us. 70% of the cost of operating van pool is we get in fares. So it's a very cost-effective service to operate. It works very well for its particular purpose. I can see an expansion in van pool, but again, probably want to see how customers want to see that new money spent.
Okay. And then finally, not really a question, but I know, or I would hope that in future plans, you're thinking about extending the SWIFT 2 line, should it be approved, into downtown Bothell to serve the University of Washington Bothell campus and McMenamins. So I don't know if you can speak to that. Is that something that's on a long-range plan?
We're really excited about SWIFT. We have a long-range plan. We have a 6-year plan. Both of them include the development of up to 8 what we call transit emphasis corridors, each of which in the longer range would be served by SWIFT, or Bus Rapid Transit. As part of the Proposition 1, the third, we're talking about a third line of SWIFT Bus Rapid Transit that roughly would start on 196th, about at the Edmonds Community College, across 196th under the freeway, north on Alderwood Mall or Alderwood Parkway to 164th and over to the Ashway Park and Ride, later extending westbound over to Mill Creek. The second line of SWIFT from Canyon Park to Boeing, on our existing maps, Todd's got a copy, but on our existing maps shows a possible extension after the original line is built from Canyon Park to UW Bothell and Cascadia, and on the north end, well, that's the south end connection, back down to the colleges.
Okay, thank you.
And that third line of SWIFT, I am optimistic could be delivered by 2023 when, by the time Link Light Rail gets to Linwood. So a second line of SWIFT by 2018, possibly a third line of SWIFT by 2023, and then 5 more lines on the map for longer range development.
Great. Councilmember Ram.
Thank you for coming. I used to ride Sound Transit to Seattle from Canyon Park. It was very, very good service.
Sound Transit or Community Transit?
I'm sorry, Community Transit, not Sound Transit. Is there a way that a Bothell representative can get on your board? And how does that work?
Well, the way it's a good question. The way that works, according to state law, every 4 years, all of the cities within our service boundaries send delegates to a meeting, and those delegates select members to represent them on our board. Small cities get a couple of representatives and an alternate. Medium-sized cities get 3 members and an alternate. Large cities, 2 members and an alternate, and Snohomish County gets 2. So you wind up with 9 voting members plus a 10th member who's a representative for organized labor. So that's the way to get on the board. And has Bothell sent a delegate to that?
You were invited. You've
So-
had representation before.
Okay.
So you will receive a letter very shortly asking you to identify a delegate to represent your city to come to that composition meeting and vote for a representative for the cities in your population category, and you would be mid-size.
Okay. Great. Let's see here. So the east-west routes, we've had a lot of comments about 228th Avenue Northeast, I think it's Northeast, as well as State Route 524. People that live to the east of Bothell Everett Highway up there. That's the fastest growing area in the state, I believe. At least that's the statistic I've heard. And I don't know if is that one of your potential expansion routes? Either one of those.
There are no lines on the map at this point. Again, we're gonna look to get collecting a lot of citizen input. You know, even with a proposition, I expect we're going to have more demand for new routes and new services than we're able to meet. So it's very much going to be an exercise of putting that new revenue to the highest and best use. We don't have lines on a map at this point. So I
Okay.
can't answer that for you.
Okay. I guess I made my plug for those. Would you like that in writing as well, or?
No.
No? Okay. One last thing, the Canyon Park Park and Ride, I did use it quite a few years ago, but there's plenty of parking, it seems, around that park and ride. Have you guys looked at working with adjacent properties to rent some of the spaces from them? Because we have a lot of parking over in that or in that community or business park.
I don't know the specifics about adjacent to the Canyon Park Park and Ride, but I can tell you we have a very robust program we call Park and Pool, which is exactly that. We go to businesses or institutions who tend to have available parking during our peak periods, and we contract with them. We pay a fee per stall to lease their spaces for use at our park, for park and ride use. So it's a very large, very robust program, but I'm not sure about the activity adjacent to Canyon Park Park and Ride.
Okay, that'd be one way to get some more parking down there, I would imagine. There's a couple big churches, maybe they'd want to lease some spaces.
We have a lot of churches under contract. That's a good fit for them and for us.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, you too. Mr. Heath, thank you so much for coming tonight. Appreciate you making the drive. Hope it's a smooth bus commute home for you.
Thank you for hosting us.
All right, all the best. Next on our agenda tonight is council committee reports. We do have scheduled Arch dedication funding source discussion. City manager, who's leading us in that discussion?
As I understand it, it's Councilmember Sandberg.
Thank you. So on September 23rd, Assistant City Manager Peter Trotzen and I attended a Arch Council workshop. Arch being a regional coalition for housing, they are our affordable housing resource for King County, for our area. And they did an overview on local housing needs, and I think the majority of the talk was focused on strategies on how to address those needs. And as many of you know, Arch helps the city develop comprehensive plan goals and our housing strategy plan. So they provide support in that way, but they also provide direct assistance to support local affordable housing through their trust fund. And cities fund that trust fund by allocating their CDBG grants. Almost every city does that. Bothell is one of the few that only allocates just the CDBG grants. They don't make any other general fund contributions to the Arch Trust Fund. And so this meeting was focused on how to build the trust fund and what strategies could be implemented to build the trust fund. And I know that I thought I saw Arthur Sullivan walk in, so he could probably speak more eloquently to that, and I hope we will have the opportunity to let him speak. But there's a great need. We're not fulfilling the need for affordable housing, but there is a sweet spot in which we can, or Arch can, leverage federal and state grants, and they could more effectively leverage that if they had more money in their trust fund, is the gist that I got. And so with council's permission, could we have Mr. Sullivan come up and speak about maybe what those potential tools could be in a toolkit to increase the Arch Trust Fund, and then maybe he can correct anything that I have mischaracterized.
Mr. Sullivan is always welcome. Nice to see you. Want to come join us, and you feel free to sit at the desk if you have paperwork, or you're welcome to certainly stand at the podium, whatever works for you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Councilmember Sammer gave a nice introductory comments about the workshop. It's an effort that's been a conversation by the executive board of Arch, which are chief executives for about a year and a half. What we've been looking at is that we know cities do a wide range of different strategies for housing, one of which, though, has been the trust fund. It has been one that's been particularly effective, especially for the higher needs in our communities. And one of the things that we started looking at was sort of the performance of the trust fund over the years. The one correction, Councilmember Sandberg, is that Arch is not the one who directly gets those funds, but agencies come to us and we fund, and they're the ones collecting it, but the local contributions are a very significant part of gaining the support for other projects or other funding sources for the projects throughout East King County, including several that have been located over the years in the Bothell community itself. What we did and what they wanted to look at is the performance of the trust fund, because it has been relatively flat, and at some level that's good news because of the recession. It was hard for cities to maintain that, but our housing costs have significantly increased in the 15 years since we first came back to all the councils and developed what we call the parity program, where we sort of set goals for each of the communities for participating in a trust fund based on the GMA policies of fair share, et cetera. The funding has been relatively flat, and we've seen the production of what we've been able to achieve through the program go down from about 190 units a year down to around 100. So the question that was sort of posed is there a strategy for trying to, given that we're growing and needs are even greater, is there some way to get back to the kind of levels of funding or success we've had in the past, and understanding the situation with local jurisdictions? I think tonight is just meant to be an overview. We'd be happy to come back at another night to talk in more detail. But basically, we also recognize that maybe a way of looking at this is, in the past, as was mentioned, it's been CDBG and general funds primarily, is to look at, are there maybe some fees that could be created or revenue sources that have linkages to housing in our community. And some of you may have recalled or have seen the articles about efforts in Seattle this summer and reports on recommendations there. One of that is to add a component to the REIT programs, to not take from existing, but add another increment that could be used specifically for affordable housing. So we looked at a range of different ideas of things that have sort of linkages to housing and offer those up as ways for cities to find other tools that they could use to help supplement the Arch Trust Fund. So the idea is not necessarily is to sort of say, let's grow the toolkit available to cities and then revisit based on some of those needs state legislation, such as like demolition fees for single-family homes, maybe charge a fee that would be used to fund affordable housing. The whole idea is, as a first step, is to grow a set of tools, see if those that need legislation, see if the legislation provides enabling legislation, so it doesn't mandate cities do anything. It just says if you want to, you can do this, like as we've helped cities with things such as multifamily tax exemption, fee waivers. They're all basically give you some parameters that enable you to do more. And so what we see is the combination of general fund and these new tools. Look at that and then all get back together after the legislative session and say, now, should we update our parity goals, understanding the suite of tools that different cities have available? It would then become up to each city to then come up with their own individual strategy on how to approach it. The reason why we're trying to do the quick follow-up is some of these ideas take legislation, and the idea is to see as a first step if cities are willing to add to or consider for their legislative agenda support for some of these tools. And they're basically the increment of REIT, looking at demolition fees for single-family homes, and or potentially condominium conversion. If you convert a rental unit to a condominium, that maybe you could have a fee. And so those are the ideas that were presented. And as Councilmember Sandberg said, we did provide background on both not only the needs but the history of the trust fund. And I think the consensus was that we should go back, brief councils, and see as for a first step the legislative agenda. We have more detail. We'd be happy to come back between now and the end of the year and go over some of this in more detail. But tonight we wanted to get it on your radar and see if it's something of more conversation with the immediate ask, the legislative agendas, and then with more work to follow up next year where we again bring back council representatives and talk through this idea at sort of a next level, and then setting up conversations for the next biennium budgets for a number of our members. So that's sort of in a nutshell, and happy to answer questions at this point.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Any questions?
I'd be interested in hearing more. I'd be interested in having you come back.
Okay.
So for me, I like things that are more incentives. We're looking at a few different projects on the outside that would be incentives that we could offer as a city for affordable housing as part of the component of new developments, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if 20% of your project is affordable housing, you get tax credits for 8 years, 12 years, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
Legislature's thinking about changing that to 20 years, I heard today. I don't know if you've heard that as well.
That was one of the things on the legislative agenda from the Seattle work, and there's
Okay.
different ideas, and they're playing around with different ideas, but that is they are looking at the time frame of that program,
Okay.
yes.
The punitive charges I don't get nearly as excited about. Like if you're going to tear down a house, don't see the correlation between redevelopment of a housing lot to rebuild a house and what that has to do with affordable housing. Why would you penalize that redevelopment of your city from
Right.
taking a house that somebody owns to tear it down, re-permit, rebuild?
So I think the issue there is for a number of the members of the Arch that the homes that are being torn down are relatively lower cost homes, and they're being replaced with much higher cost housing. And so they are losing some of their affordable housing stock when homes are torn down and being replaced with a lot more expensive homes. So that's the logic. And again, in my introductory comments, the idea is trying to create a suite of tools. And for example, on certain examples, some of the cities were there where that doesn't seem like a good fit, but some of these others are. And the way Arch has always worked, as was made in the introductory comments, you relied on CDBG. Other cities have been CDB and general fund. Is we're not trying to come up with every city use the same approach, but we're trying to come up with a suite of tools that understanding the East King County market could apply in different ways in different jurisdictions.
Now, condo conversions, I think, are going to come back in great force, but condos are a form of affordable housing in the sense of affordable ownership. Because often if housing median is around $650,000, you'll see a condo potentially go for $350,000.
Right.
That's affordable in the city of
Right.
Bellevue or Redmond, whatever
Right.
it might be.
Right.
Why would we want to penalize a conversion to allow more ownership?
And again, the example there is that housing was rental housing that was probably affordable to people at maybe 2/3 of the income that's needed as a condo. So it's the same concept.
Yeah.
That market, which is can be a good thing, can also have repercussions on the overall supply and availability of housing in the community.
I'd love to hear a lot more about incentives to incentivize home developers and builders about, to encourage them to come to our city to build affordable housing rather than say we're going to charge some fees and maybe drive development out of here. We
Right.
like seeing sales tax revenue and REITs coming in. So my perspective. Others? No? Mr. Sullivan?
It sounds, I don't know if I heard from what the rest of the council said, but does the rest of council agree that we would like to have Mr. Sullivan come back before the end of the year and talk about these potential tools and
Yeah.
potential legislative agenda?
Yeah, I see a nodding majority. Great. Thanks so much for driving up tonight.
Yep, thank you very
Hope your
much.
commute goes well home as well.
Thank you.
Figuring out the lanes and the little
Well,
slider
we're
thing
actually
in your car.
getting recognition from PSRC for a project in Kirkland in which we did use incentives to get
excellent.
affordable housing built. So,
Well, I'd love to hear more about that.
Right.
I think that'd be excellent.
okay.
Good. Thank you very much.
And at a park and ride lot, so it links to your transit
I
conversation.
love
earlier.
COD. There's a good friend of mine doing one in Mount Lake Terrace right now of 400 units right next to the community transit that I noticed on the picture. Some excellent ideas that are coming forward. Thank you.
Bill?
Yes, Mr. Evans.
I had another brief committee report, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I serve, Dell and I serve on the North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Board, or committee, I guess, which represents, and there are representatives on there from the cities of Woodinville, Kenmore, and Bothell, and King County and Snohomish County. And that board is set up to oversee the operation of the NPRSA which is North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area that was created by the voters in 1988 for the purpose of building the senior center, the North Shore Senior Center that we have here in Bothell. And that facility has been a fabulous facility for many, many years. Then we also, the NPRSA passed bonds to build the adult wellness center there also on the same site. So just a quick background on that. And so what happens currently is we own those two facilities. The North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area owns those, which is made up of essentially the North Shore School District boundaries. And we lease those facilities or contract those facilities for operation back to Senior Services, which is an agency out of Seattle, I believe, that oversees many senior centers around the area. And we contract with them to operate the facility and provide programming and things, that type of thing, services. They, in turn, in this particular case of the North Shore Senior Center, then they have a memorandum of understanding with the North Shore Parks and Recreation, or the North Shore Senior Center Board, to actually operate the programs for them through Senior Services. So over the years, there's been a lot of discussion about should the North Shore Senior Center stand on its own and operate as an entity in itself, or should it still be involved with the Senior Services? And recently, Senior Services has made some changes in their operating model, and so the North Shore Senior Center Board has said maybe this is a good time for us to look at that option of us going on our own to operate and have our own program with local controls and that type of thing. So the NPRSA board is going to be meeting here later in November to discuss. Actually, we have a contract with Senior Services to operate those facilities. So we would potentially terminate that contract and then contract back with the North Shore Senior Center Board to operate the facility. So that's just something that we're looking at, and there seems to be interest always has been some interest of, going on their own, so to say, as the North Shore Senior Center operating on its own. And so we'll be looking at that and potentially making a decision on whether or not to terminate our contract with Senior Services and then have a contract directly with North Shore Senior Center and go from there. So we'll be working on that through the end of the year and hope to have that resolved. Just wanted to make you aware that that's an ongoing discussion.
Excellent. Sounds very creative. Councilmember Sandberg?
Do you know if the senior center has the financial ability to contract directly with the NPRSA, or was the Senior Services organization providing a lot of the stability there?
Senior Services does provide insurance coverage. They do have H&R services, that type of financial services I think they provide to them. But essentially the money that the Senior Center generates, they get some money from Senior Services, but then they also generate more than what they get from Senior Services to operate their facility. So financially, they would just go on their own operating, and instead of having to give some of the money they raise back to Senior Services, they would keep that all in-house and provide all their services in-house. So obviously that's a big question to look at that right now, is financially can they do that, and that's what the Senior Center Board is looking at.
And I could add on to that. The North Shore Senior Center pays Senior Services for all those things that Councilmember Evans mentioned and other services. The amount that the North Shore Senior Center gets back in services from Senior Service, what their fees for providing their service are a little higher to help offset the cost of smaller senior centers that Senior Services works with. So in essence, they are paying more than what they're getting back because they're using North Shore Senior Center to help fund and cover the cost for these smaller senior centers in other parts of the county. So they are looking at their financials to see if they can make this work, but they would have to create or contract with maybe another agency to provide the HR services and things like that. And hopefully they could get a better deal and keep more money in their center. So,
Perfect. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Well, that should bring us to the end of our council committee reports. Next is the consent agenda. We do have 2 items still on there, AB 15148 and
Move
150.
passage.
Councilmember Lamb and seconded by Councilmember Evans. Everybody wants to place their vote. And if the clerk can display, passes unanimously with Councilmember Agnew absent and excused. Next item is AB 15149, which was pulled by Councilmember Sandberg. Councilmember Sandberg, this is the Johnson Controls installation, a new key card system.
Yes, thank you. So I sent several questions to staff today, and I appreciate their response. And I was looking at the spreadsheet that looked like it was the entire 2015-2016 asset replacement budget. I think that's what it was. It didn't look like it was just police. And when I look through the spreadsheet, it looks like only about $105,000 is budgeted for this updated system, and yet it's the cost is $152,000. So how would we be coming up? First of all, did I interpret the spreadsheet correctly? And how would we be making up the balance of that $45,000?
Mayor, Council, if I can just figure out,
Take your time.
yeah, just need to put the projector on here. Thank you. My name's Clark Meek, Fleet and Facilities Manager here for the City of Bothell. This is a little more of a simplified sheet for the asset replacements that was given to Councilmember Sandberg. Draw your attention to second line item, key card system hardware, $120,000, key card system software, $20,000, and down here we have video security system, $40,000, giving a total budget of $180,800, something like that, for this project. If I may point out a typo in the agenda bill and a monetary thing. On the recommendation, it says $152,273, including Washington State sales tax. That actually should say plus Washington State sales tax, bringing this project up to a total cost of $166,738.93. So there's a typo there.
So can you explain from this little clearer version of the asset replacement? So how much money is budgeted then? It looks like it's $140,000 is budgeted.
120 and another 140 for the key card system, and then for the video security system, 40,800 down here. I'm sorry, let me pull this up here. Video security system, 40,800, and this project is both combined.
Okay. And then there's a base price of about $100,000, and then system upgrades, which are about $53,000. So can we get by with a base price, or do we need all of these upgrades? And I'm wondering also, can this contract be fine-tuned a little bit more to get more savings?
Staff spent a great deal of time working with the police department staff in dispatch and in records, and with the contractor in fine-tuning this. And we are not replacing all the cameras. We are only upgrading a few of the cameras. And that's where you see some of the upgrades is for cameras. Where the base price includes is what we call the cans or the control cabinets. Those are the main items that need to be replaced. I'll ask Carol here to speak to the video system quality and so forth.
So the system has not been upgraded. And good afternoon, or good evening, Mayor and Council. The system has not been upgraded since the building was built over 15 years ago, and since then, if we're talking the video cameras, this used to be analog, very old. It is eroding, and it's almost the visibility of what you see in the video is exceptionally poor quality. It's also not supported because things have moved to digital. This is problematic when we get public records requests because it's very, very time consuming to go through the old analog system. So you were talking cost in man hours to be able to pull this data out in an efficient way, and the video that we get is of very poor quality. In regards to the key card system, as was mentioned, and this is I'm taking on faith that it is the cans, but I do know that it's the key card system is starting to fail, and I noted that a couple years ago and called over to say we needed to do something, and was told for cost efficiency they wanted to combine it with the city hall, which made sense because you get an efficiency in moving forward with one system. But in that 2-year period, we now are having the cans, I guess, have eroded to the point that now, just today, in fact, I now have to use a hard key to get through some of the doors in the department. Car keys are very, they're not efficient. They're high risk. If somebody loses their key, it's very expensive to rekey the building. Whereas a car key, if you lose your card key, you can quickly get, deactivated. So we're really at a time we should have. It was scheduled 2 years ago. We're really at a point that we need to get this upgraded.
Thank you,
And
Chief.
what I've got to say with Public Works, they really, they're looking at harvesting the pads, I think, aren't you? And we're trying to take what we can use of the old system, but we're at a point that needs to be replaced.
You've explained it well, and I think made a good argument for sure. Any further questions?
No, just a comment, but
Yep.
it sounds like Councilmember Evan has
Other questions?
Yes, I appreciate those questions, and I did read your responses to the to Councilmember Sandberg's questions. I thought they were very thorough and answered those questions. The other one that I had, as I discussed briefly with Clark, was the idea of could we bid this out as a separate project. And it's my understanding, the city discussing this with the city attorney, this is more of a sole source vendor, if I'm saying that correctly, and that they're on site and that we can award this to the sole source rather than bidding it out. And there are advantages in doing that because they're on site now and already working that type of thing. So I think this is, while it's costly, I think this is protection that we have to have in our police department, not only for our officers, for any of the public that's in there or whatever the situation may be. So I would strongly support this, and I think that all those questions have been answered sufficiently. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? You have a comment?
I appreciate that we need to upgrade systems that we have in the city, our facilities. But it's hard when we have another agenda item tonight, which is the sidewalk program, that is not, it's underfunded. We received an email just today from a member in the community complaining that we underfund our traffic patrols, and as a result, we make our children unsafe when they're trying to get to school. And so help me make a case to the public that says yes, we should spend this $150,000. And I recognize that we have these other deficits that we're not addressing.
So, is that a question
Yeah,
for
I
me?
guess so, yeah.
So, it's a Solomon's question you're asking me to do here, because there's a system in a building that's, it's a great building. But it is now over 15 years old, and at some point, the core systems within it start to wear out. It's got, 86 employees that are going in and out every single day, and the system's wearing out. And so, obviously, we have to have a way of securing and being able to get into the secured building through a card key access. I don't think most people would say hard keys are the way to go anymore for a variety of reasons. So, and the system is wearing out. So it needs to be replaced. As far as the video cameras go, unfortunately, in our nation today, there are people that can get angry with government, and frequently government buildings, particularly police departments, are targeted for criminal behavior. Just last month in Olympia, their city hall had their windows broken. We have angry people or aggressive people sometimes coming into the police department, having these baseline security systems, and they're not overbearing, they are cameras that are set in strategic areas for very, very good security reasons. And I think, having come from the county where we had a police car at one of the precincts parked in front of the police department and exploded with a bomb. I mean, these things happen. And these are preventative measures or that most facilities have. So.
Great. Councilmember Lamb.
So I'm ready to move the recommended action, and then I think we can have deliberations as a council, if that's okay.
Go for it.
So I'll move the recommended action. So I want to thank our police chief for her presentation, and I think one of the important things that we have up here as decision makers is to look at the safety of the people who protect the city of Bothell. And I think that's every time I hear when I campaign and every time I talk to citizens, public safety is the #1 priority. And we ask a lot of those people who protect us, and we ask a lot of those people who protect our citizens. I don't think it's fair to say, what would you rather have, a police officer in a school or a new security system? It's kind of like asking if the front lock on your door is broken, well, do you want to have your child have new shoes or replace the front lock? At some point, it's a difficult decision. You would like to have both, but you can't have an unsecure facility. And I think that with the asset replacement fund that we have, this has been planned for. This is something that is a good idea. It's something that's essential for the security of the people who provide security for the city of Bothell. I think it's also important in this day and age that we have transparency for our law enforcement. I think when you have public records requests, when people are part of the security system this covers is people who are transported from our jail to our court. If somebody says, you know what, I was roughed up on the way in from the jail to the court, the only way we have of knowing that is that taping system. And if that taping system is blurry or we can't get to it or we can't respond to it, you can have, not that I believe this occurs, but you could have misconduct that's uncovered, or you could have allegations of misconduct that are impossible to prove because the technology isn't there. The conversation in our country and indeed in our community is moving towards more transparency with respect to law enforcement. This is an essential element of that when people are in our custody and when people are in our care, we have the ability to accurately record those events and respond to public records requests that are lawfully made about those events, whether it be by defense counsel or by prosecutors or by interested members of the public. To me, this is not a difficult decision, and I appreciate the work that staff has done, and I appreciate the questions that Councilmember Sandberg has asked because I think they illuminated our discussion. Thank you.
You wish to speak to it, Deputy Mayor, Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Sandberg? Councilmember Sandberg?
I'd like to make an amending motion that we open this up, this contract, to a competitive bid process.
No current second. You wish to speak to the motion?
Sure. So I don't disagree with what Councilmember Lamb has said. We do need to make sure that our public safety personnel are safe. We need to make sure that the city is protected from liability for public records requests. So I don't disagree that it's a good idea, but what people see, what our citizens see, and what I hear from them, what we hear from them, is that they watch this get funded, and yet there are things that are very important to them that don't get funded, like sidewalks and crosswalks and greater patrols. And so, and these are things that they want. We're not acting on them. We tell them that, hopefully there will be improvement in 3 years, and that just isn't satisfying for the public. And so we need to have, and yes, it is an odd choice, but this is a general fund distribution. And so these general funds, although they are in the asset replacement fund, could just as well be in some other kind of fund. And so I'm going to be voting against the motion because I want us to take the opportunity in the mid-biennium budget review to have a serious discussion about how we elevate the concerns and needs of what our citizens are telling us.
Great. Well, for me, this has been an extraordinary week in Bothell, extraordinary several years. As I look at downtown and see the redevelopment, we've invested about 150 million, in new roads and sidewalks. I look at Wayne Curve's improvement there with the sidewalk that extends down to Kenmore. I look at the improvements of sidewalks and roads in our downtown intersection of 522. Then almost from downtown all the way up to Canyon Park, we see two new bicycle lanes and sidewalks all the way up to Canyon Park. We have listened to the public. We've actually doubled the size of Bothell Landings Park. We're looking forward to see the improvements, to continue to see the master plan built out there. But I would argue that I have listened to the citizens of Bothell for many years, as has the majority of council. We have an opportunity right here to spend $150,000 as requested by our police department, which I will certainly support. One thing that I saw prior to my being on council over 10 years ago is we saw a lot of sales tax revenue leave our city and go help build sidewalks and other improvements in other cities in Woodinville, Kirkland, Redmond, as we were providing, or they were providing retail establishments to spend their money and then create sales tax revenue to help support their services. What we saw many years ago was we could create a sense of place here in downtown Bothell that people want to come to. We're really seeing that happen now with Amaro, with Main Street that is strong and vibrant. We've seen, obviously, McMinimans come to town, which is a great resource. Thursday night was a thrill, having over 5,000 people at a football game, which Council or Deputy Mayor Spivey got to see, and then the McMinimans packed, and Amaro packed, and Main Street packed, and 1,200 people on Saturday on our main streets. We're seeing money come back into our city. So the talk about the reinvestment of our tax dollars into downtown is going to be exponentially return. So we can spend money on this $150,000 here, plus further sidewalks throughout our city. So I've listened to the citizens. I'm excited to vote tonight to support the motion that's on the floor to put safety in the hands of our police who are keeping us safe each and every day. Any other comments? No. Thank you, everybody. Now have an opportunity to vote for the recommended action made by Councilmember Lamb, second by Councilmember Evans. And if the clerk can display, passes 5-1 with Councilmember Sandberg and against. Next on the agenda, actually, visitor section. Thank you all for being so patient. Thank you so much, Chief. I appreciate your presentation this evening. Visitors, thank you so much, you all, for waiting. I do have a sign-up sheet for 3 people. If there's further sign-ups tonight, we do have yellow forms in the back. This is an opportunity for visitors to address council with topics that are on their mind. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes out of respect for each other person that is waiting to discuss important items with council. So first on the sign-up sheet is Sandy Alto. We have your address for the record.
Thank you, Council. My address is 19012 90th Place Northeast. And it's interesting. I just have one comment first. Have you considered raising taxes so that we can pay for all of these things? Because the conversation I wanted to have was about the transportation improvement plan project list. That is a organic document that seems to be changing. So I don't really know how this document is edited. But everybody's having a great time at McMenamins, and it's just about a quarter mile from my house, which means I can walk down there and stumble on home. And the shortest route from my house happens to be down Northeast 188th Street. So if you were there enjoying yourselves this weekend, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, you might have seen that it was really quite crowded, and the shortest route from West Hill to downtown is down Northeast 188th Street. And now that Northeast 188th is currently within the entire domain of Bothell, the folks that are from West Hill would really like to see a sidewalk that is on the list, but is not on the list until 2017. So what I'm asking is, I don't know how this list is prioritized. I mean, we have a criteria for crosswalks that I think Rita's going to speak about this evening, but I'm not sure how this list is prioritized, and I'm wondering how the community can get engaged to reprioritize it and possibly move Northeast 188th Street, which is really quite a highway for pedestrians, higher on this list. And I just have one other comment, and that is that Main Street Properties sold 6 Oaks this week to the tune of $63 million, which is terrific, and I'm happy for them, which means we get real estate excise tax. And my hope is that the money from that is not already accommodated for on this plan, and we can possibly add it to it, and that amount would serve our police force and possibly fund, this sidewalk and possibly other crosswalks that we have. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. You have a question for Councilmember Rayam?
Oh, hi there.
Hi, Sandy. Just real quick, what is that plan that you have in your hand there?
So this is from the city council. This is for the city. I would have printed it all for you, but it's in 2-point font. So really, I did. I ran it off the printer and went, forget it. So this is on the city site, and it's the Transportation Improvement Program for 2016 through 2021 project list. And I've been following it. It's been updated over the last few weeks because several weeks ago, the last line item was called Safe Routes to Schools, and it was a new item that had been added. It was pretty cool. And now it's been renamed. And the money that was allocated to that particular item, which is Citywide Child Pedestrian School and Park Zone Safety Program, originally, a few weeks ago, it said $300,000, and it was all in 2016. And now it's been changed to like $50,000. It looks like $50,000 a year for X number of years. So I don't, I'm sure Joe and Bob can talk about this list and how it grows or changes. But, I'm here to specifically advocate for the hundreds of pedestrians that go up and down from Bothell High School to 527. And now with, and now we'll all be drunk going home. So that's why I'm here this evening.
We hope that people drink responsibly. Councilmember Sandberg?
I have a question of staff based on what Ms. Alto has presented. So she's stating that the document, the TIP, was modified. So it originally stated a certain amount of money for 2016, and now that money is Is it, you're talking about something spread out over time? And
Well, to me, it looks like the document. I don't have the original. This document changes. Somebody can.
And so I guess the
It
question
changes.
I have is that it shouldn't change. I mean, we adopt a 6-year plan, and we adopt it as such. And so how are changes occurring to this TIP and being updated on the website? I mean, that's a document, that's a planning document.
Well, we haven't determined that in fact, the TIP has been changed over time, but we'll certainly look into that and report back to council.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Evans.
Maybe this is something that can be discussed so Sandy gets the information, and as part of our next presentation on sidewalks, I think that can be cleared up maybe at that point. Thank you.
Correct. So I just want to add one little thing is that, I don't know how neighborhoods can work with the city to help prioritize this list. And the reason I say that is because, a lot of folks have talked about traffic on the survey. I think the survey came back with traffic as a really high need. But somebody sitting in a car is in a 3-ton vehicle surrounded by metal. And then there's folks that walk that have nothing but their clothes on. So I'm just curious how we can work with the city.
I think that also will be addressed in the staff presentation of the next item. So hopefully that'll help answer that question.
Thank you.
And just very quickly, we do have a public process, an outreach process associated with capital facilities planning.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go look that up. Thank you.
Who are the representatives at that this year? Councilmember Rayum. I've been in the past. I stepped off this year. Councilmember Sandberg. Maybe Tom was on it. Mark Lamb, Tom, and Rayum. Okay, great. Next on the sign-up sheet is Gammy Smith.
Gary.
It looks
like a Yanny?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mr.
well,
Smith.
let me clarify that. My name is Gary Smith.
Very nice to see you,
Two
Mr.
R's.
Smith.
And I wanted to mention a couple. Do you need my address for the record? No?
No, we have your address, so we're okay. Thank you.
I wanted to mention a couple things tonight, briefly. First of all, a note of appreciation. 5 weeks ago, I was here before the council, and I asked a couple of questions during my presentation. And I wasn't sure what would happen after that. But in fact, 3 days later, I received a telephone call from Tom Burdett, Director of Community Development, to answer my questions. After a bit of a telephone conversation, we agreed that it might be better to meet in person because there's some very complex issues here that we were talking about, I think. And he agreed to meet with me and one of my neighbors, Stephanie Schreiger, and that meeting took place on October 1st. And in addition, Tom brought along Gary Hassler and Stan Kosick, who are in the planning department. And we spent over an hour talking with them. They were answering our questions. We explained what we thought was important with respect to development and so forth. And they were very gracious in taking the time to do that. And I just wanted to express my appreciation tonight for that. I thought it was great.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith.
One other thing. Having said that, we still have some development going on in this community, and I think what we're perhaps losing sight of, and is we're losing the opportunity, I think, to preserve some of our dwindling open spaces, forests, green belts, and I'm hoping that that this will be considered in making future development plans. I realize that growth is inevitable, and we have to deal with it. But at the same time, for the sake of our families, future citizens, I think we need to find a way to spend some money to fund some of these, to fund more parks and recreational spaces in our community. We don't want to hear, inevitably, from that renowned philosopher, Yogi Berra, coming back to haunt us at some point, when asked if he would like to move to the city of Bothell, and he would reply, Nobody's moving to Bothell anymore. It's too crowded. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Next on the sign-up sheet is Myrna Evers. Ms. Evers, thank you so much for coming this evening.
Thank you, council members. This will be brief. My name is Myrna Evers, and my family drove into Bothell in 1969 and saw the sign, "Welcome to Bothell for a day or a lifetime." And as it so happens, our family seems to be making it for a lifetime and have enjoyed it. We moved into a little neighborhood on 95th Avenue Northeast. It was very rural feeling, a lot of open space and no sidewalks, nothing. We felt like we were in the country. And during the time, the 46 years that I've been on that street, there was a big development put in off of 92nd Place, up 3 blocks south of the high school. And it's a very nice development. And there was a development in about 1996, 97 that went in directly to the north of my place, and it's a very nice development. Then in a few years later, there was a development that went in to the south of my house, and it's a very nice development. And we now have sidewalks. We can walk at ease, in our area, and it's just very pleasant. But in that span of time, a lot of open space has disappeared, of course. And so I'm here to speak for the West Hill Woods, and I would like to see that property maintained as open space for the quality of life of those many people who have lived here in Bothell and have moved here and decided to stay, maybe not for a lifetime, but at least for a number of years. And so I am out walking in the neighborhood that has all of these amenities now, and walking in the woods. I have met a lot of people that have their dogs, and they're from completely outside of our neighborhood, but close enough that they can walk over and they can go through the woods and use it also. So it's not a area that at the current time is just limited to a few people. It's really serving, I think, a lot of people in the area. Thank you very much.
Quick question for you. Are you talking the area just to the south that's to the west of the storage area?
The storage, it's up above west, the Yakima Fruit Market.
Okay. I'm sorry?
To the east of the storage unit. East.
Maybe west of the storage unit? Oh, well, depending on which storage unit. I guess there's 2 storage units. So maybe the area between the 2 storage units. Doesn't the city of Bothell almost own half of that currently because we had to acquire it for the widening of Wayne curve?
This is the development. I don't know what development is proposed to go in there. Why?
There's a lot of green space between those 2. There's a Sureguard storage, and to the east of that, there's apartment buildings. We just put a very large shotcrete wall on that looks like rock. Then between there, all the way to the Wayne curve, there's a lot of forest area. Is that the area you're talking about?
Up the hill, right, kind of behind the Yakima fruit stand.
Yep.
It's a WUADE, I think,
Okay.
area development that's being proposed.
I think the city owns a good share of that from the widening of Wayne curve, but I'm curious. I don't know for sure.
This is
Does anybody
owned
know?
by a developer.
No.
Maybe staff can get back to us
Public
on that.
Works, Lionheart.
So the city does own the property that's immediately adjacent to the road to 522 up the hill, but up on the top of the hill, it's private property.
Oh, it is private. Okay.
Thank
Great. Thank you so much for coming in this evening. I appreciate it. Next on the sign-up sheet is Mr. Jim Waters. We have your address already for the record. Hello, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Jim Waters. I live at 19021 89th Place Northeast. My wife and I and our family have lived in Bothell 32 years and on West Hill for the last 17 years. And I want to reiterate what Sandy mentioned earlier about the sidewalk issue on Northeast 188th going up Popkini Hill. My wife and I are frequent walkers of the whole area of downtown Seattle, and it's the only road in this whole region close to the downtown corridor without sidewalks. I mean, it's a very dangerous road, nighttime especially, but even if I invite you to walk on that street, even in the daytime, there's no shoulder, open ditches, it's a very narrow road, and the cars coming down the hill are going very, very fast if you're coming at you. We've witnessed 2 cars in the ditches there. Many of the Bothell High School students, the band, they walk down there. The sports teams walk down that road. And I think it's something that just has to be improved. And so it's not just a little thing that would be like a nice thing to do, but this is clearly a safety issue. So again, I urge you to take a serious look at funding sidewalks on that road. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Waters. Next, I have Catherine Tucson.
Good evening. Pardon me. Good evening to all of you.
Hello.
Very short. I'm speaking tonight actually also about sidewalks. We've learned much more about the sidewalk system in Bothell firsthand in the past about 6 weeks because my children lost bus service to school this year. And so we are now walking to school, which we haven't been before. My children attend West Hill Elementary. We live at the bottom of West Hill. West Hill is at the top of West Hill, so we walk straight up West Hill every day. And we're very fortunate. We have sidewalks along most of our route. There's not crosswalks on all of the routes. I actually emailed the City Council. You may remember getting an email from me about this. Ms. Sandberg was who responded to me on that. We set up a meeting with Mr. Mahmood, who I believe is here. Yes. And he looked at the crosswalk and initially said that would be great, and then said, oh, nope, can't do it because it's not ADA accessible, so we'd have to put in wheelchair curb cuts. And that was it. That was the end of the discussion. So he said we can maybe get flags in by the end of the 2017-2018 school year. Maybe. But not a lot of immediate movement. And this is a small change. I've looked at the walking route maps for Shelton View. I've looked at the walking route maps for Frank Love, and they have children as young as 6 years old walking unattended along the sides of 240th, along Meridian, where there's no sidewalk, where there's no shoulder. And the sidewalk situation in the city, in my opinion, is fairly dire. I live on West Hill. I can't walk to the new Safeway up on Bothell Everett Highway. There's no sidewalk. It's less than a mile from my house, and I can't do it. And so I appreciate the new boulevards, and I appreciate the new roads, and I appreciate everything that's gone in for traffic. But the sidewalks in the city, where they exist, they're almost unnavigable. They don't connect. I love to walk, and I can't do it in this town. And so I would appreciate if all of you would consider the importance of having an integrated citywide sidewalk plan to help correct some of these deficits. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. I do have a question for staff. I'm wondering with the ADA ramps, they can be very expensive, especially if there's changes in topography. Do we have written in our code those are required where reasonable? Or is it a state ADA requirement?
So you're about to get a study session about crosswalks and sidewalks, and Jamal can answer some of those questions. But essentially, any sidewalk, any intersection of roads, it is a crosswalk. It's not marked crosswalk, and we don't tend to mark local streets, crosswalks on local streets. As soon as we do, we are required to provide ADA facilities in order to match up with the pavement markings.
Is that a state ADA requirement?
It's a federal requirement, yes.
Okay.
If I can address that quickly. As a result of that, there is no ADA accessible route to West Hill.
It's interesting how some regulations can prevent common sense otherwise.
Well, it would be great if there could be an ADA accessible route to the elementary school.
We would agree with that too. Councilmember Sandberg?
So are there any requirements if you want to flag an intersection, does that trigger any expensive improvements, or could we flag intersections without incurring a lot of expense? And I noticed that, and just as a follow-on, when she was having that conversation about the crosswalk, I noticed that there's a crosswalk now across 102nd Avenue from the Park and Ride to the Main Street business side, and I thought, well, that's not ADA. But then, what's happening? Are there curb cuts going in with that? I know it's kind of two separate questions. One's flagging. Can we just do flagging without triggering expensive curb
Councilmember
cuts?
Sandberg, are you okay if we answer that during the sidewalk and crosswalk program? I should have reserved my question as well, but
All right. And then one more quick follow-up, and then I promise I will take my seat. When you say we don't usually you don't usually do crosswalks on residential streets, I live on a one-block cul-de-sac, and there's a striped crosswalk across the mouth of my cul-de-sac.
okay. Yeah. Could have been the developer. We don't know. Look forward to the conversation. Sounds like it may be a lively one here later this evening, something to stay for. All right. Thank you all for your comments. I don't have any further sign up. Ms. Gwynn. Oh, and then after Ms. Gwynn.
Good evening, Council. Sandy Gwynn, Bothell resident. I'm going to talk about two different topics tonight. The first one is the RFA. Recently, city staff provided the benefit charge amount for a $350,000 house and the total additional charge a Bothell taxpayer would pay. This amount was based on the city reducing their tax levy to Bothell residents. Has City Council discussed and agreed to this tax reduction? And if there has been no discussion or agreement, when will City Council discuss this? The average cost of a home in King County is $500,000. And I respectfully request if city staff could build upon the $350,000 comparison and show what the current cost is for 2015 and would be for 2016 with and without the RFA, using three valuation amounts: the $350,000, the $500,000, and $750,000. Second topic is AB 15-151, public input regarding the storm and surface water master plan update. The conversations before mine, there were a lot of things I wanted to comment, but I can't because I'm going to run out of 3 minutes. But in this particular staff report, the city did establish 2 new facility charges in 2011. So the city does establish taxes and they do increase taxes to cover certain items. First, when I'm talking about this agenda bill, I want to take the opportunity to compliment our public works for all the work that they do. They are the powerhouse of the city. And when I briefly went through the storm and surface water master plan update, I just am amazed at all that they accomplish. I previously expressed when I was on City Council my concern about opening Horse Creek Culvert, which I felt if we opened it up, one of the concerns I had was the increase in the temperature. And when I'm looking at what is on the previously school district property, the open culvert, I don't see trees being planted, and I'm wondering what the city is planning to do to help keep the temperature cool in the streams, especially if we have another hot summer. How would the master plan that's being proposed tonight address the temperature increase that I've identified above?
Want to finish your question?
And to me, the least expensive way to protect the environment is to purchase land along streams and rivers so that the water can naturally seep into it. One piece of land is the Fitzgerald sub-area that pops to mind for me. Does the plan allow the acquisition of this? And I don't, to say in my 3 minutes, I have one more item on the North Creek levee system.
Well, I'm so sorry, Sandy, out of respect for others. I do have a question for you. The $350,000, I was just looking up the median price of homes in the city of Bothell was, I think it said, let me get back to it. It was $429,600. Be interesting. I'm wondering.
I took it from the East Side Business Journal. I believe there was an article in there that said King County, and I didn't say Bothell when I gave the quote, but it was $500,000 is what I read.
$500,000. Okay. Well, something that would be nice to be able to calculate based upon the median housing income.
And with the
depends on what you look at. I'm looking at another one here. It does say 531,940. So
yeah,
we'll find the right one.
It is open for the public. The item I was just talking about didn't get to finish. can I stay for that item? And will you take public comment during that public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Ma'am, I saw that you raised your hand.
Just a point of order.
Yes.
The previous speaker, Ms. Gwynn, asked a couple of questions about, has the city council discussed and agreed to a reduction in property tax in relation to the fire benefit charge? So I don't know if we want to address that later. Maybe staff can respond to her separately. I mean, the simple answer to that question is no, we haven't done that. So, but maybe staff can respond to her.
Maybe we could put it on the projected agenda, or
Sure.
I don't know. We're still waiting to hear back from the RFA committee on their analysis of the offer that was put forward. So I think that's an important thing to wait for as well. And maybe at that point, they're redoing their financial analysis. We can have a look at that as well. But from what we heard last week, it was going to take 3 months just to get a response back. So, ma'am?
Good evening, council and public. I'm also talking about the sidewalks on 188th Street, the lack of sidewalk.
I missed your name.
Marcia Stedman.
Thank you for coming
Sorry.
back.
Thank you. And thank you for having me and letting me speak tonight. I just rise to agree with, reiterate what several speakers have already said about the lack of sidewalks on 188th Street Northeast, because I live at the top of that hill and near Sandy, and I noticed walking down, I chose to walk down the hill to McMenamins this past weekend because I knew the parking would be difficult, and there was no parking. Even cars were parked on the side in those ditch areas on 188th Street Northeast. So there was a lot of foot traffic there, and there's always foot traffic up and down that street. People walk to the grocery store these days. And so do school children walk up and down. My daughter did walk down to her bus stop when she was in first grade, and that's many years ago. But I really do hope that we can prioritize the sidewalks on that street. They go halfway up the hill now. They need to actually get up to the top of the hill so that we can all have an easy and safe commute by foot up and down that hill. And until the parking is improved, we're going to be walking a lot. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Stedman. Nice to see you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, that brings us to the end of our visitor section. Next item on the agenda is AB 15-151, which is public input regarding the storm and surface water master plan update. We should have a staff presentation. Craig, nice to see you this evening.
Thank you, Council. Craig Stamper with the Public Works Department, and I'm here to present an overview of the storm and surface water master plan. I'll get oriented here. Master plan update. Give me just a second. So tonight, this is an opportunity for formal public input and council input and comments on the plan. In fact, maybe the last in a series of opportunities for input on the plan. It is currently scheduled to come forward for approval in November if everything goes as we're expecting. But this is a last in a series. As I mentioned, we've had open houses and published the plan on the website. It was put up on the website on September 30th. Hopefully you had a chance to review the plan, take a look at it in detail, and the public has had some chance and opportunity to go through it. My presentation is going to be very brief tonight. I'm simply going to provide an overview of kind of the purpose of the plan. Not a detailed analysis and discussion of the plan. You've had a chance to look at it. But if you have any questions about anything specific in the plan, I'd be happy to answer them as we go forward. To frame this, I'd like to go over the purpose of the storm and surface water utility. We control and manage the storm and surface waters in the city of Bothell for three reasons. One is to protect properties and people from the impacts of stormwater runoff from built facilities primarily. The second purpose is to control pollution, and that is to minimize to maintain and improve the water quality in the city. And the third area we work in is we work with other departments and others to help protect and preserve and restore the aquatic resources in Bothell. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we do as a utility. This master plan is really a guide for the utilities activities into the future. It's important to point out it is not specifically a decision point on each activity that we make. In fact, the City Council will make a number of decision points, and you continue to make them on a regular basis as we go forward. You're right now considering rate setting, for example, and that is a specific action that you'll take. You have budget approvals that allocate the resources that the utility uses. You approve the capital program, which identifies the specific projects that we do within the budget periods. And also you adopt the code changes that provide the regulations and the activities that we provide in that respect. So you have those specific decision points. This plan is more of a strategy and a framework for that. The plan's organized into 5 sections with the supporting appendices. The first section is kind of a program overview on everything that we do. The next 3 sections cover projects, watershed management, and our financial aspects of the utility. The section 5 provides specific action items that are recommended in the plan. Again, many of those will come forward to you in the future. So that's kind of the real simple framework of the plan itself. A quick little overview, program overview. We don't anticipate any major restructuring of the utility in this plan, but we know regulations will continue to become more complex and expensive, particularly the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, NPDES, or Clean Water Act regulations. Those will drive a number of things, but certainly not all that we do as a utility. Some of the programs that are tied to this NPDES that you're going to see pretty soon are low-impact development code updates. That's going to come forward to you starting in December, and it's going to go forward next year as something you'll be considering. And that'll be very important to how the city develops into the future and redevelops as well. We're going to be doing illicit discharge screening and elimination as part of our water quality actions. That's required by NPDES. And we're going to be doing a stormwater design update, stormwater manual design update. So this is a document that helps us govern new development as it comes forward, and that's required by NPDES. A number of things are really associated with the services we provide, the projects that we do that protect the environment and the people and built environment as well. We also have identified a water quality action plan. Again, this was last done for the city in 1996, and a lot has changed since then. This plan is going to have a bunch of specific items that we will do as a utility to protect water quality. Furthering our maintenance and asset management systems is important. Rates reviews, again, you're doing that now, but also looking at the rate structure next year is another item we have planned. And then a baseline staff review of our equipment and needs into the future is important. All of these are described in our action items in Section 5 of the plan. Again, I don't intend to go through that at all in any detail, but I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you have. So where we are now is you saw this plan in a study session in September, and this meeting is an opportunity for public comment. We will take that comment, put it into the final plan if you approve this, and then we'll go forward with the adoption of the plan at the November 17th meeting. That concludes my overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions you or the public have.
Great, thank you. Before we jump into council questions, I will open up for the public. Ms. Gwynn still's here. Ma'am, if you want to start first, and then we'll have others that can come up and address council. Yeah.
I previously spoke about the opening of Horse Creek, and my one question I had in there was, how does the proposed surface water and storm master plan update address that issue when we open up a culvert to keep the temperature down? And the second question I had was, does the plan allow for acquisition of land that would be beneficial to the Sammamish River and our creeks, that would lower the temperature and provide water quality? Because there are a few areas, especially in the Fitzgerald sub-area, that provide such an important part to the health of Sammamish River. And the University of Washington spent a lot of money on the largest recreation of a wetland, and that is along North Creek. The Fitzgerald area is along North Creek, and we purchased down at Thrasher's Corner that land through a grant from Snohomish County. My other question deals with the North Creek levee system, which is privately owned, and it does not appear that the cost for the monitoring and management of this system has been determined. In the Storm and Surface Water Master Plan, the North Creek levee system states that it shall be monitored and maintained by the city. It's not a should. And my question is, will staff bring back a summary cost analysis of every project that's listed as a shell in the plan? And if they are, could they separately separate the cost if the project is privately owned or publicly owned? And for the privately owned, if it's owned by businesses or residents? Because I'm trying to look at, when I looked at the plan, what the cost was, and there's been a lot of discussion about equity. So I would like to know if the residents are equitably paying for their share in these projects, and our businesses equitably paying for their share. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sandy. So anyone else with questions or comments this evening? Ma'am, if you came forward and say your name for the record.
Hi, my name's Lynn Anderson, and I come to all these meetings and I'm confused on this topic. Something was put online on September 30th. I was supposed to read it, and somehow I missed that memo. I'm not sure why we don't have a formal presentation about this whole plan. I don't know how the citizens are supposed to learn of reading this. I don't know how long it is. There's a lot of stuff online. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just not sure how the public has been made aware enough to know they were supposed to read it. Because if I try to read everything you tell me to read. And so I'm just concerned. I'm not sure what this says. I'm not sure why we didn't have more information and a formal presentation on this. So it looks like the timeline's going pretty quickly for the public to even have any input on this. I'm just giving you that feedback. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. This is kind of seems like a lot going on. So anyway, that's just my feedback for you.
Will you entertain a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi. So I was wondering, did you happen to see the study session where we?
I was at the study session.
So you were there when it was presented?
I don't remember this whole complete plan that he said was on there, so I'll have to go back and review that. He said that he hadn't done a presentation on it. That's what I was confused on, and that we were supposed to go online and read it. That's what I understood from the last comment.
I think we actually did have a presentation
Did
on
we have
the
on the whole thing?
Well,
I'm not saying you're wrong. I just am telling you I'm confused, and I come to all these things, and I'm just letting you know that I'm confused on what it's.
And I'm trying to understand, I guess, what you're confused about. Were you confused that you had the expectation that we expected, or the city government expected you to read the entirety of the stormwater plan?
I would have to go back and look at what it actually said, because the way he presented it, that he did not present it to everybody.
I don't. Just to be clear, I don't think the city of Bothell has the expectation that every citizen read our stormwater plan. I think they're free to, and I think they're welcome to, and I think we invite our citizens to engage in that. But I don't think the expectation.
Good. I'm glad.
That we would.
That's good. I hope that. So anyway, I'll go back and review my notes, but This is a confusing topic to me, I'll be honest with you.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Councilmember Sandberg.
I think Ms. Anderson brings up a good point. This is a 152-page document that would be good for all of us, including the people watching here and the audience watching from home, to go through that document. I mean, you went through it very briefly, but I mean, there's some information in there that I think would be very illustrative for people watching, and I think for sometimes for the listening audience, it's hard for them to digest this kind of information. And when we just have a format where you answer our questions, and I say, well, I have a question on page 9, and I have a question on page 70, you know, that works for me, but it doesn't work for the public. So,
yeah, I'm just giving my
I don't know if Craig has, you know, a full-blown presentation for, you know, to go through the highlights of the plan, but maybe we could have that at the next meeting that we talk about this, because from what I heard from what Ms. Anderson said, it's not that she necessarily has a problem with the plan, but taking the opportunity to educate the public more would be a good thing.
Yeah, one study session I don't think was enough for me, obviously, especially whenever there's stuff about rate hikes. I tend to really note that, and I notice that, and I will go back and look at those parts. But anyway.
And I say all this because I know you come to every meeting.
I try,
and you do your homework.
And I do try to do my homework. That's why I was confused. And I thought you guys would want feedback that I was confused. I will do my homework and look at it a little closer. So thanks.
Great. Councilmember Evans.
Yep.
Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah.
I think I recall we had the discussion at a work meeting. And you are here at all meetings, so I don't know.
It could have been at a study session. There's a lot of different topics, and there were 2 water ones. I'm just saying this one I wanted to give you feedback seemed confusing to me.
Now, the other area, and I don't know if it's on our website or not, I'm assuming the document is, but if it isn't, it's as our agendas come out, and those are available to the public.
Actually, the agenda link has been broken the last week or so. You can't look at future agendas. At least from my computer, I've been trying to look at future agendas, and it just comes up like a 403. I get a 403 message.
Were you able to see the agenda packet tonight?
I was able to see the current one. I'm not able to see future agendas.
Well, it was attached to the agenda packet tonight.
I know. You know what? I'll be honest with you. I'm just so inundated with reading the hundreds of pages. I really do try to.
Well, actually, I think there's a simple clarification on this one issue, because you just said I can't download future agenda items.
I feel like I am just letting you know. I don't feel like I want to be on the spot anymore and answer any more questions. I was just sharing with you my concern. I'm just letting you know, but I feel like I'm on the spot right now, so I'm going to step away and listen to you all. Thank you.
Thanks. Ma'am, if you want to come forward on this item.
Justin, follow up for what she said. I did, in fact, click on the projected agendas link on the website on my phone just now, and it gave me a 404 error.
So you're saying that you can't see the projected agenda, or you can't link to the agenda items in there?
I'm saying that on the page that comes up for the Bothell City Council meetings, there's a link on the sidebar for current agenda and projected agendas. And if you click on that projected agendas link, it gives you a 404 resource not found.
That's incredibly helpful feedback. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Great. Councilmember Williams just said that when this was presented and discussed was September 8th, if that helps find the agenda item. Great. Anyone else?
And just as a point, if it was discussed on September 8th, then we did not receive a presentation on the entirety of this 152-page plan, because the plan wasn't made public until September 30th. So I don't remember hearing. We had presentations on utility rates as they related to the capital facility charges, but not as related to the storm and surface water master plan update.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Mayor, there's also a open house on April 23rd of this year on the subject, as well 23rd. As 2 in October of 14.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
That leads to the end of the public discussion. Now to council questions. We do find ourselves at 7:58. We as a council will take a 20-minute break, of which time we'll actually go into executive session. Then we'll come back to discuss this item. Executive session will be on litigation matters. And so we'll be adjourned until approximately 8:20. Would that be enough, Joe? Executive session for 20 minutes right now? Okay. If not, we'll come back and notify.
Just testify.
Session. Thank you all. We're still in the middle of a discussion for AB 15151. Craig, it's now our time as a council to ask you questions. So, is there anyone from council who wants to jump in first? Councilmember Evans.
Do we have any idea of the number or how many of illicit discharges that we have throughout the city?
No, that is the purpose of our screening that we have to do. We will go systematically through the city. We really don't have a great handle on the number of potential illegal connections and discharge points through the city. We discover them periodically, but we haven't done anything systematic.
So we have some out there, but we don't know how many yet, or that type of thing.
That's correct. Right. And our requirement is to screen 40% of the city by the end of 2016, and then 20% each year after, 14% or some number like that.
And one last question. Why not include some analysis of our MUGA areas? I mean, if we're going to have to go, our urban growth areas, if we're going to have to go back and recreate this thing somewhere down the road, why can we not at least make some study of that area now?
We certainly could. We don't collect utility fees in that area, so the plan doesn't anticipate spending any money in that area until and unless we look forward to annexation of the area and collecting utility fees. So that's why it was sort of left out of the plan, but certainly
but I guess there's impacts coming to us from those areas.
Well, I think that the city should, and it's identified in the plan, work with particularly Snohomish County upstream of us in managing development to the extent we're able as well.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Other council members? Councilmember Sandberg?
But I'm having technical difficulties.
I can ask a question.
Councilmember Lamb can go first. I had a question, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but in the last 5 years, how much money has Bothell receiving grants from WIRA 8?
I haven't been here long enough to know that. The most significant one I'm aware of is the Sammamish River Side Channel project that we've applied for and are looking toward getting. And the total grant funding will be on the order of $1 million. So
that's something that hasn't been awarded yet, but they were hoping
partial
to get.
award, but not complete. So,
okay.
And
like in the last 10 years, how much money have we gotten from WIRA 8? Do you know?
That's something I'd have to get back with you on to be accurate.
Okay. Don, do you have a guess or no? Okay. So just for the benefit of the public, Don said he would get back to me with a number and that they don't have it tonight. And then how do we compare like with other jurisdictions under WIRA 8? I mean, have we been getting more or less money, would you say?
Again, I'd have to do some analysis on that. We haven't looked at that specifically.
Okay.
Do that.
So this is proposing a rate increase, and when we say, just kind of in layman's terms, what is the stormwater rate? When we say that there's a stormwater rate charge, how does the average business or homeowner experience that?
The way we currently charge our surface water utility rates is based upon the impervious surface that the property has, and then we have these tiered categories right now, but we charge them based on how much impervious surface they contribute to runoff in the city.
And do we send a bill, or is it tagged onto property taxes? I just want to. We had a number of public comment and people saying, I don't understand any part of this, and I don't get it, and I don't understand what's going on. So
I'm sorry. We currently bill through the county, Snohomish County and King County's property tax system for the majority of our utility bills. So people, they get that bill on their property tax. It's not a property tax bill. It's just the means we use to get it. So it is a little bit hidden sometimes for property owners that don't maybe get their property tax bill. It goes to an escrow account or other system.
So if you don't own private property, you don't contribute to this.
That's right. We bill the property owners.
Okay.
We are in the master plan. There is an item to look at our rate structure and how we bill, and next year to evaluate if it is the most effective, appropriate, fair, and transparent way.
So, in essence, when we talk about increasing rates, it's increasing a part of your property tax bill that's not called a tax. So you would experience that if you live in Snohomish County through your Snohomish County property tax, and in King County through your King County property tax.
Through the property tax bill.
Okay.
Not the property tax. It is not.
So it was used like a standard $350,000. I don't know why we use, as a speaker pointed out, and the mayor pointed out as well. I'm not sure why we use $350,000, but we use a $350,000 home. What would a $350,000 homeowner pay for stormwater in Snohomish County?
Again, we do not charge based on valuation. It's charged based on impervious surface, and we have categorized all single-family homes into a single unit, and they pay $149 currently per year.
So $149 a year if you have a $1.5 million home, or if you have a $118,000 condominium that's part of a larger complex.
It's based upon an average impervious surface. Yes.
So and we don't delineate between single-family homes and condominiums.
Yes, we do.
We do. So if
single-family homes have a one category. Condominiums and commercial uses and all of that, we calculate the actual impervious surface for each of those properties.
Would it be typically lower or higher for a condo?
There's so many variables, it's really hard to say, but generally it's going to be lower, but it depends on.
And there's no variables for single-family homes?
Currently, our system doesn't have any variables. All single-family homes are charged a single set rate.
So when we say that it's going, because people can say like, it's a 9% increase, that means $149, it's going up $13 a year, is that right?
That would be correct.
Okay, so every single homeowner would pay essentially a little over $1 a month more, and as part of their we're not calling it a tax, but it would be experienced in the portion that they typically understand to be their tax bill.
It's part of that billing system, and if we use 9% increase on the bill, it would be approximately $1 a month.
And then in the subsequent year, we're anticipating that to be 5%, and in the year after that, we're hoping that it's 2%.
That's what we had when we developed the plan. You've heard recently that the city is proposed, that staff has proposed a little bit different fee increases, and so Don can speak to those.
You're like, I'll hand it over to Don when we talk about the changes in fee increases.
Yeah.
Don's the best at handling that. Go ahead.
That'll be presented in more detail in 2 weeks, but for stormwater, we're proposing, if we've got it in conjunction with the downtown facility charge because of the $18 million Horse Creek project
that we all know and love.
So if we have a bigger rate, a bigger capital facility charge increase for the downtown area, we'll have a lower increase in our stormwater rate.
If you charge the new development and there are a higher capital facilities charge, so it may be lower than the 9%, you're saying, or it may...
So, for instance, so if we raise the downtown facility charge 41%, we would raise...
It's a healthy raise.
That would be a giant raise, obviously. We would raise the ratepayers' rate, say, 8%. I think it's 6.5%. But if we didn't raise it at all, the downtown facility charge, which pays towards Horse Creek, we would raise it like 13%, I believe it. They're 12.5%.
Versus 9%. Okay.
Right. And then in the middle, it'd be about 9%. So, which might be a good compromise. But that's up for discussion in 2 weeks. So.
Thank you both for your time, and I appreciate your indulgence in my questions.
Councilmember Sandberg.
Yes, thank you. So I have a couple of questions that tie into what Councilmember Lamb said. So I noticed on page 8 of the master plan, so not in our agenda packet, but on the master plan, you talk about recommending alternatives to the billing that we currently have. So you mentioned that the stormwater charge appears on the property tax bill.
That's correct.
And so, so why are you recommending an alternative to that? Is it an inefficient way to collect money, or what is the reasoning behind that?
It's actually a relatively efficient way to collect the money. It is not necessarily the cheapest way. There are private systems out there now for doing billing. It does not provide us with a good connection point necessarily with the payers, the rate payers, as to what they're getting, because the bill comes on their property tax. If we were to, for example, and I haven't come to a recommendation on this, but if we were to individually bill each of the rate payers, we would then have that contact point. The bill they would receive would be a point where they would see what they're getting. We can use it for public information, and it's a very transparent way of collecting the fee. When this was established a while back, and most utilities, when they can use property tax, it's very non-transparent. You get the bill, they pay it, it's good for collections. There are pros and cons, and that's something that we're recommending evaluating and discussing this next year.
So we get a water and sewer bill.
Correct.
So would this just be our water, sewer, stormwater bill?
It would, except that the water and sewer bill are based upon the people that are using the water and the sewer. The stormwater bill is based on the impervious surface, and it's billed to the property owner. That is not necessarily the case with a water and sewer bill.
Gotcha.
The other problem, of course, the Snohomish County portion, we don't serve water and sewer to. So there's another, so that we'd have storm-only bills.
Yeah, we have multiple,
okay.
Multiple agencies to deal with in that regard. We do not have currently a citywide property owner-based billing system of any kind, and that is something we'd have to talk about, whether it makes sense or doesn't make sense in this case.
Okay. And then are you able to put up page 70 of the master plan on the screen?
It would take me a little bit of effort. Which one is this one, if I may ask? Because my version may be a little different page number.
It's the projected rate increase for single family.
Page 70?
Yes.
Afraid it's not the same page as mine, but I can come up with
It
that
is page, well, it's on the blue border on the top of the page, which is consistent for all of the pages in this master plan. It's page 70. So
Is this
that,
the graph?
yeah,
you're
that's
referring
it.
to?
The graph that shows it goes up and up and up and up.
Yes.
So can you explain that?
The utility was fairly level until 2008. There were changes earlier that you don't see here, but there was certainly some jump in 2008-9 as associated with the new NPDES permit requirements, in which we had significant additional efforts that we had to do staffing-wise related to the Clean Water Act. So that's why the jump happened there. There's also the ramp up in this area has to do a lot with the projects, downtown projects and other projects that we're doing as well. And so that's about as much detail.
Well, I guess I was expecting that with the completion of our major capital projects, mostly the ones downtown, that curve would flatten and maybe go down a little bit, but it doesn't look like the trajectory of that will ever do that.
Well, it won't go down because we have the ongoing maintenance requirements of our system, the ongoing capital and ongoing operation requirements. The curve from 2016-17 onward is relatively flat based upon inflationary increases, 2.5% a year.
Okay.
Councilmember Sandberg, just looking at time, we have another agenda item, and we're 9 minutes from the end of our meeting.
Couple quick questions. So you have listed critical action items as updating the low impact development regulations.
Yes.
Is that something that the Planning Commission is already doing? Because I noticed there's a due date of December 2016 for LID regulations and also storm design standards. So, and those were your high critical action items.
Yes.
Is Planning Commission working on those? Is that going to be on their work plan for next year?
Yes, that will be on their work plan for next year. They aren't currently engaged specifically in that effort. They certainly have been engaged in certain planning areas in the city and low impact development, and will sort of follow some of that. But yes, we plan to bring a contract forward with a consultant to you in December to begin the process, and we've been working with the planning department as well and discussing engagement of the Planning Commission in that process.
So that sounds like a pretty involved process.
It's not probably as difficult as it seems, but it will be significant, yes. The stormwater design manual update is not as significant.
Okay, and then council received an email yesterday from Mr. Dave Black of Regentwood, and I forwarded that to you today. I'm not sure if you had received it before I had forwarded it to you. But in that email, well, he has a lot of questions and a lot of suggestions for change, and a lot of it revolves around private stormwater facilities. So it doesn't sound like we have time to discuss that tonight, but I would ask that you respond to Mr. Black's email and CC the rest of council so that can inform our discussion the next time, because I'm wondering if we have allocated enough funding for the maintenance of the identification of these stormwater facilities, public and private, and I believe that was also a comment that was brought forward to us tonight from a member of the public.
Thank you. I received that at 5 today, and we have allocated money or identified an action item in this master plan to study the idea of maybe consider modifying our private system maintenance requirements, but we have not allocated any kind of amount or effort toward actually changing what we're doing. We're just going to study whether we should change it or not, and that would be a policy question for council that could have significant impact on rates.
And just final question, so is there a time sensitivity to this, to the adoption of this plan? You mentioned that you're going to bring it back in November for adoption. Sounds like we have an opportunity to educate the public with a more thorough presentation on this master plan. We also have some pretty significant questions from the public posed this evening. Is it time sensitive that it be approved in that meeting in November, or do we have the opportunity to discuss this one more time and then?
You have the opportunity to approve it at your leisure.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Councilmember Ram, do you want to make a motion to extend?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to extend till 10 o'clock.
Second.
Any discussion? Everybody can place their vote. The clerk can display. Passes 4-2. You have the floor.
Okay. I would like to see this come back so we can move on to the next agenda item. I do have just a couple of things quickly to bring up. I do want to hear the responses to Mrs. Gwynn's comments that she had at the next council meeting this comes back to. I just want to clarify, WIRE 8 doesn't have its own funding. It uses state funding and allocates it amongst its partner jurisdictions. It has WIRE 8 has a plan to restore streams that was a 10-year plan. The 10 years have lapsed and only 10% of the funding has come. So, but there's 90% of the projects identified 10 years ago that haven't been funded, so that's why there's not a whole lot of money going to any local governments. But there is the Stormwater Financial Assistance Program. There's $100 million a year allocated by the state to retrofit existing stormwater infrastructure to restore streams. The primary thing that a city needs to do or a county needs to do to be competitive in that process is to prioritize which streams in your jurisdiction actually can be restored with a reasonable amount of investment. And I don't see that in this plan, and I'd like to work with you guys or try to figure out a way that we could try to incorporate that into this, because I think if the city takes the initiative to say these are the ones that these are the creeks that we'd like to fix, I think there's state money that'll come in and help us. It's 100% grant funded. You don't need well, no, take that back. You need 25% match for any project. So, but obviously it would bring in a lot of revenue to fix some creeks in the city. I'll leave it at that. I would like to see this come back before we try to approve it. So that's my opinion.
Great. Deputy Mayor? Okay. So thank you so much, Craig, for leading our discussion tonight. We'll see this come back on a future agenda. Enjoy your evening. Next item on the agenda tonight is AB 15152. We have 45 minutes scheduled for that. This is a study session regarding citywide sidewalk and crosswalk insulation program. Great. Hi. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. At the council retreat earlier this year, Public Works staff indicated that we'd be working on creating a more robust pavement preservation and sidewalk program. We indicated we would be working to recommend a funding package for these programs along with the needs of street maintenance and bring it back to you early next year, hopefully at the next council retreat. At a recent council meeting, the council requested staff to provide an update on the sidewalk program and also provide information on crosswalks. So tonight, Rita Hu will be providing you with a brief snapshot of where we are with the sidewalk program, and then Jamal Mahmood will follow it and provide you with information on the crosswalks.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Rita Hu with Capital Improvement Groups. I'm here to update you on the status of the sidewalk program. So the sidewalk program goes to implement the city's petition comprehensive plan to provide a priority list of the petition improvements with funding recommendation and to ensure that all the city's petition facilities are in compliance with the Americans with Disability Act, ADA. Over the last 6 months, we conducted sidewalk inventory. The purpose of conducting sidewalk inventories are to determine where the missing sidewalks are and also how many missing sidewalks we have, and also identify the deficiency in the existing petition facility based on the current ADA standards. So we surveyed 14 miles of the street within downtown sub-area. We surveyed 69 miles of the streets in arterials, collectors, and some local streets. In total, we identified 246 missing segments. We inventory approximately 55% of the street, and we still have 45% of the street to complete. Those are the neighborhood streets. We understand the importance of the neighborhood street, especially those are around the school. So our plan is to meet with the school district and schools to identify some critical streets which are around the schools and add those streets into our current inventory list. So this exhibit here shows the sidewalk inventory, and the missing sidewalks are identified in red. So in total, we surveyed approximately 83 miles of the streets. We found that 64% of the inventory has sidewalks, and approximately 36% of the inventory has no sidewalks. So because there is a great need for sidewalk improvements throughout the city, therefore a way to score and prioritize sidewalk project or pedestrian improvement projects is needed. So our proposed ranking system has two components, attributes and proximity. A higher attribute score is representative of the area where the missing pedestrian facility is, or the condition of the existing pedestrian is poor. A higher proximity score is representative of the area where the pedestrian activity is likely to be highest based on the demographic, land use, or transportation conditions. So this table shows our proposed attribute criteria and scores. So we classify the missing sidewalk in two types: missing sidewalks on both sides of the street, missing sidewalk on one side of the street. A higher score range between 30 and 50 points is given to a missing sidewalk segment which has no sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. A lower score range between 10 and 30 points is given to a missing segment which has sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. This is to ensure that we give a higher score to a street which has no pedestrian facilities. This table shows the proposed proximity criteria and scores for all the pedestrian facilities. So the criteria include street classification. We give a higher score to an arterial or a collector because those streets generally create high pedestrian activities. We also consider schools. So the school zones include elementary school, junior high school, and even the school property. The analysis buffer zone we use is quarter mile. And we consider collision data as well, and we consider public services area. So there are two types of public services defined here. We also want to provide pedestrian facility to low-income people. Therefore, we have a low-income residents as one of the criteria here. So this is a photo of the Northeast 188th Street. As you can see, neither the sidewalk nor the paved shoulders exist along both sides of the streets. So to determine the ranking scores for these missing segments, this is how we are going to do it. So no sidewalk on both sides of the street, no paved shoulders on both sides of the street. Therefore, the attribute score is 50 points. The street is classified as a local street, 10 points. There is a school property within quarter mile range, 10 points. There were a few collisions within quarter mile range, 8 points. And downtown area and clinic are within quarter mile range. Transit stop and commercial area are also identified within quarter mile area. Low-income residents is not identified, so 0 points. So the total ranking score for the Northeast 188th Street is 88 points. This is another example of the city-owned street, 240th Street Southeast. There is an existing sidewalk on south side of the street, but no sidewalk, no paved shoulder on the opposite side of the street. So following the same scoring methodology, the total ranking score for the north side of the 240th Street Southeast is 60 points. So by comparing the two examples here, our proposed system gives a higher score value to a street which has no pedestrian facility with high pedestrian activities. So in addition to the sidewalk inventory, we also conducted self-evaluation for curb ramps. Today we reviewed 833 curb ramp locations, and all the attribute criteria are determined based on the current ADA standards. To be ADA compliant, each curb ramp must meet all the attribute criteria. This exhibit here shows the curb ramp inventory. So based on our inventory data, only 3% of the existing curb ramps are ADA compliant. So to conclude what we have done today, we conducted self-evaluation for sidewalk and curb ramp. We developed a ranking system to score and prioritize pedestrian facility, and we developed missing sidewalk project improvement list based on the proposed ranking system. And our next steps, we will conduct public outreach to get citizens involved in our sidewalk programs. We will provide planning level cost estimate for each project we have identified. We will apply for grants and continue to implement the sidewalk project. And lastly, we will develop a preliminary ADA transition plan. ADA transition plan is a federal requirement and is an action plan for city to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and everyone. My name is Jamal Mahmoud, and I am a traffic engineer for the city. And I am here to talk about a crosswalk, a process, and the criteria, definitions. Introduction. Pedestrians are legitimate users of the transportation system and should be able to use the system safely and without unreasonable delay. Planners, engineers, when we design something, we have to make sure it's safe. It's not just design it because it's requested by somebody. Pedestrians are at risk whenever they cross the roadway, and this is really very important. As a traffic engineer, I noticed that sometimes if the crosswalk is not well designed, that causes problems. So regardless if there is marked or unmarked a crosswalk, we are at risk because there is a conflict between pedestrians and cars. The degree of risk depends on the complexity of vehicles and pedestrian traffic patterns. Effectiveness of supplementary information provided about the crossing location, direction, and duration. So if we have wider roads, that takes longer time to cross. So when we think about installing crosswalk at that location, we have to put this in mind. What can we do to shorten the distance? A crosswalk at an intersection is defined as extension of sidewalk of the shoulder across the intersection, regardless whether it's marked or not marked. There is a book called MUTCD, which is a Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and that define the crosswalk as provide guidance for pedestrians. A crosswalk marking also serve to alert road users of pedestrian crossing point across roadway that are not controlled by traffic signal or stop sign. And this is very, very important. If you have a stop sign, sometimes we do not have to install crosswalk at every intersection. It depends if there is a lot of conflict between pedestrians and cars, because cars must come to a full stop at the all-way stop signs. If they do not come at the full stop, this is not engineering issue, this becomes enforcement. The law is the operator of an approaching vehicle shall stop and remain stopped to allow pedestrians and bicyclists to cross the roadway within an unmarked or marked crosswalk. And this is RCW 46.61.235. So if there is marked or unmarked and the car sees somebody on the street, it is the law, they have to stop for it. At the same time, the law says no pedestrian or bicyclist shall suddenly leave curb and move into traffic so that the driver cannot stop. Crosswalks are two types. There is pedestrian crosswalk and school crosswalks, and they are completely different. Different when it comes to signage, when it comes to the way we think about it. For instance, this sign is for pedestrian crosswalk, and this sign for school crosswalk. You see, it's completely different. In addition, here at the school crosswalk, we lower the speed limit on the road from whatever, 25, 30, 35 to 20 miles an hour. So we sign it accordingly. We say this is 20 miles an hour. But at pedestrian crosswalk, we do not lower the speed limit. We keep it as is. It's 25 or 30 or 35. We keep it as is. So there are different criteria and different ways of looking at these crosswalks. Now, this is a very important chart. This is the process of pedestrian crosswalk, and it is pedestrian crosswalk and not a school crosswalk. This is for the school crosswalk. Let me just go through this quickly. As I said, crosswalks are two types. It's pedestrian and school. And here, for pedestrians, I will be looking at neighborhood, like local streets. The speed limit is low, 25 miles an hour. And at arterial, which is the principal, minor, and collector. Sometimes the speed limit at these types of roads are different. Most speed limits on the neighborhood is 25 miles an hour. On the arterial, it could be 25 miles an hour. It could be more than that. And when somebody come to me and ask me, I would like to install a crosswalk at this location, and I'm talking about pedestrian, I'll go to the site and look at things such as sight distance, lighting, and if there is sidewalk, if there is ADA ramp, and also something very important, which is pedestrian generation. So if there is church, if there is a school, if there is shopping mall, business area. So I value these things, and I score them accordingly. If there is side distance problem, for instance, if somebody asks me to install a crosswalk at a horizontal curve or vertical curve, which makes it difficult for the driver to see a pedestrian. So if I do install a crosswalk at these locations, I am harming people. So what I say we cannot install at these locations. And if we think that the crosswalk meets these criteria, there will be an engineering study. So first of all, we say, yes, it meets the criteria, let's do the study, or we say it does not meet the criteria. So we cannot even continue because we are endangering people. So if it does meet the criteria, we do the study and we will look at the elements that makes it safer for people. And even not just safer, it is what type of tools we have to use. There are several tools, and I will show you later. This is the process for school crosswalk. School crosswalk is two types. Number one is a crossing at the vicinity of the school. Vicinity of the school is within 300 to 500 feet. So I believe we do have crosswalks and flashing lights at these facilities. So if there is within these facilities, we design it and we install it, and I think we do have flashers at all schools in the city. The other one, which is most people ask me about, they want to install a crosswalk within 1 mile of the school. And why is 1 mile? Because if you live 1 mile, within 1 mile you have to walk to school. So people ask me, we need to install a crosswalk at this location. So at the same thing, I will be looking at side distance and lighting, if there is sidewalk, if there is ADA ramps. In addition to that, if this is a school route, and if things meet these criteria, we'll do engineering judgment. And the engineering judgment is based on the site visit.
Jamal, can we pause you just for a moment? One of the council members would like to ask a question.
Sure.
So I just had a question on this flow chart. Is there and I'm assuming the answer is yes, is there a downside to installing a crosswalk where it's not needed? Because it seems like much of the flow chart is directed to us not, other than cost, to us not installing crosswalks.
if we install a crosswalk and it's not needed, you are right. We are endangering publics or kids. Did I answer your question?
That is an answer to my question. I guess I was wondering how, if let's say a neighborhood comes up and we're like, we absolutely want a crosswalk, you put it into this flow chart and you're like, you know what, it's a no. What is a scenario under which school kids would be endangered if we did put in a crosswalk when this flow chart would dictate that we shouldn't?
For instance, if it is not within 1 mile of the school, so that is not considered school crosswalk, it will be considered pedestrian if warranted. Second is there is side distance issue. If I have been asked to install a crosswalk, which I have been asked, at locations where the side distance is very poor. So if I do install one, regardless the cost, if I do install one, I am endangering these kids because the driver, as a driver, you do not have enough time to stop.
Okay.
For the pedestrians.
Thank you for that explanation.
You are very welcome. And there is calculations that there's the height and distance and the speed. So these elements I'm talking about, which called engineering judgment or engineering study.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. This is the scoring system. And in the scoring system, I will be looking at the speed, at the volume, signalized intersection, sidewalk, the whole accidents. I will be looking at that and I evaluate the location. A crosswalk liability. There has been considerable controversy in the United States about whether marked crosswalks increase or decrease pedestrian safety at crossing locations that are not controlled by traffic signal or stop sign. Again, it is stop sign and traffic signal. So we are not recommending installing a crosswalk at this location at stop signs. So it is if we don't install it right and if it doesn't meet the warrants, probably the city is liable. I designed one crosswalk in Shorelines like 10 years ago. It was very well designed. We have the money. We put the flashers. There's light. And somebody was crossing. First car stopped for it. Second car, they were in a hurry, and they overpass, and they hit the pedestrian. So that's why I'm saying that whenever we install a crosswalk, whenever we cross the road, there is risk. So my point is, if we minimize number of crosswalks, that will help us because we are not imposed to risk. This cost estimate of different crosswalks, there are variety of treatments. And as I said, if we have 3 lanes or 4 lanes, that will take too long for pedestrian to cross, bearing in mind that the average speed for pedestrians about 3.5 feet per second. And also I consider children, their speed is less than that, or elderly people. And there's a formula for that. So pedestrian warning signs. If we just install a sign and the crosswalk, just signs for crosswalk, that's about $750. It is just a sign, bearing in mind that we do have ADA ramps, we have crosswalks, just installing signs. Rumble strips. It has advantage and disadvantage. Rumble strips, they are 2-3 layers of thermoplastic. We install them across the road. It is just to warn people that, hey, there is a crosswalk ahead of you. They are noisy, so we have to be very careful when we install them, not in front of people's houses. But some people like them, some people do not like them. And if we just install the rumble strips, about $650,000. And also we can do text. We can say pedestrian crossing pavement stencil, which is just say school in the front of the crosswalk. If that is school crosswalk, it's about $400 just to install that one. In pavement, flashing lights. I believe like 15 years ago, I installed the first one in City of Edmonds. It still is working. And it's effective. Also, it has advantages and disadvantages. If there is snow and we need to blow out the snow, we damage them. And the cost of this is about $22,000. Overhead. We have several of overhead flashing for pedestrians. The cost is $45,000. Also, it depends, it varies. But this I got this example, that's how much it cost on one of the cities I worked for. If there is no power, if we use solar, it's different. If there is, so the cost for solar flashers and power is different. Personally, I like the power one because they are more liable. Raised medians on the road. So we have 3 lanes, and if you install a median in the middle, that will be helpful. It means that we are decreasing the travel distance. The kid or the pedestrian can travel from one side to the median, then continue. And the cost of that one, I don't know it. A flat-topped speed humps. So these speed humps, sometimes called speed tables, pedestrians may cross the streets on the raised flat top. And I have seen this in Bothell.
I'm sorry, I don't want to be rude and interrupt you, but I'm wondering if we could maybe jump into council questions just because
of time.
Looking at the hour and the time that we've allocated.
Sure.
Or maybe how many slides left do you have in the presentation?
2 or 3 slides.
2 or 3 slides?
Yeah.
Maybe we can just finish up with the 2 or 3 slides, then we'll
Okay.
jump into the questions.
This is traffic calming. I'm just narrowing the road. This is very expensive one. We call it HAC. It is high intensity activated crosswalk. This looks like traffic signal. You push a button, you will see the red light. And this is about $150,000. And last one is the RRFP, which is rectangular rapid flashing unit. We installed a few in Bothell, one on 240th, and this is about $14,000. Next step, Steve will be talking about it, but we are here for any questions.
Great, thank you.
I'll be really quick. So Public Works is planning on having 2 open houses in the first week of December to get input on street maintenance, pavement program, sidewalks, crosswalks. An additional 2 more open houses in the second week of January, same thing. And then we plan to come back to you, again, hopefully toward the council retreat to make its recommendations on programs and a funding mechanism of some sort. And with that, we'll take questions.
Thank you so much, Steve. So, anybody want to jump in with questions? Councilmember Evans, then Deputy Mayor Spivey.
So, Steve, how will those be noticed, those public meetings? How do we get the word out on that?
So I'm not the one who's doing that, but we're going to use as many methods as we can. We're going to try to get it out there, social media and whatever means we have. I don't think we can mail it to everybody, but we'll see what we can do. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what we're doing, we heard a lot of sidewalk concerns and crosswalk concerns from the schools, so we'll hit up the PTAs and try to let them know.
That'd be great to reach out as much as we can to the different groups. When the school district designates or considers an existing, when they put in their walkways within a mile, a school walkway route, do they take into consideration the existing conditions there, whether or not that's a good street for a school walkway or a bad street, or do they just say that's the most direct route?
I think this is a question for the school to answer.
Okay.
But I have been talking with them, and it depends on the kids at that street. So if we have 4 or 5 streets, but we have several kids living at this street, they will consider that. They can change the map of the route.
And do they provide any funding at all for any of those school walkway areas at all that we're aware of? I know it's in the right-of-way, and obviously that falls to us, but I was just wondering if that topic's been discussed with the council or with the school district at all as some source of funding to help with these.
Actually, they do. Just last couple of months, I worked with them to install a sidewalk on 9th Avenue Southeast. and they gave us some money, and we used money from the school, and we have some money, and we built sidewalk, which was really important.
Great.
Yes.
And is it appropriate to put a sidewalk on one side of the street only and not both sides of the street? I mean, a good, well-designed street, can it just have a sidewalk on one side, and is that enough or appropriate?
I don't know the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
I think it depends on the street, and at some point you always got to cross to get to the sidewalk, and that's the bottom line issue. If there's a good, safe crossing to get to the other side and you build a sidewalk on one street, you're pretty good. If there's no good crossing point and it's too far spaced between the crossing, then the safer thing is to have sidewalks on both sides. So I think it really depends on where you are.
Great. So Deputy Mayor Spivey, then Lamb, Rayum, and Sandberg is our
Great.
our
Thank,
order.
thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious as to the delineation between affordable housing and low-income housing. Use the example of 188th, where they got a 0 score for low-income housing within a quarter mile. So I'm just curious what delineates affordable housing from low-income housing.
Good question.
Is that the criteria from the federal government? How do you determine that? That requirement we're going to have to look at. I think the low-income, affordable housing is a lot more flexible than I think the low-income requirement. And I think the low-income requirement is kind of a federal-based thing. I'll check on that and get back to you.
Okay. And then it kind of goes to Councilmember Evans about sidewalks on one side of a street. I drive 100th frequently from 190th northbound up to about Penn Park. The sidewalk on one side of the street, there are what I would call good crossing points on that road, but constantly people are walking on the west side where there is no sidewalk. And I see that also on 104th, where there's four-way stops on there. There's other good crossing points, and people constantly walking on the west side of 104th, where there's a sidewalk on the east side. So how do we, where we have sidewalks in place, how do we encourage people to use them, because that's the safest alternative? I mean, we're talking about overall pedestrian safety, and habitually people are not using them where they're offered. So how do we encourage that aspect of it?
That's a tough question. A similar question is, you have highways and you provide safe crossings and people cross in the middle, and then you see transportation department starting to put fences so you can't cross in the middle, and you start chasing yourself that way. I'm not sure of anything we can do other than provide a safe facility, and I'm not sure if we can force people to use that. I think convenience comes into it. Some people don't want to walk a block and then cross again, so that you might just be driving down the street when you see that person on there. I'm not sure how to
because they're essentially walking in a bike lane that now cyclists have to leave that bike lane to go around them into traffic. And so it's the ripple effect of the problems that they cause.
And I think part of it is, I think Jamal touched on it, you're dealing with behavior of people, whether it's pedestrian or drivers, and then you're also trying to predict that and create a facility that's safe. And there's a lot of studies done, engineering studies, on what crosswalks are safe or how to build a safe sidewalk. Probably a lot less so on how to get people to use that rather than experiencing a little inconvenience. Like I said, I drive 522 a lot, and you'll see people crossing mid-block just because they don't want to walk another 150 feet down the road, even though there's a perfectly safe signalized crossing point there. They'll wait in the median, and sometimes there's not even a median, there's a left turn lane, and they'll wait there to cross because they don't want to walk. And I'm not sure how you stop that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
So thanks for the presentation. I was wondering if you could put up Exhibit B from the packet on the overhead. So as I understand this, and I'll describe it before it's put up, this is the streets that are in purple are those that have gone through the ranking system that you have come up with and would be identified as sort of high ranking missing sidewalks. And it's not in it's not in color on the overhead, unfortunately. Maybe it's, I don't know if that's a black and white copy or not, or if we have a color copy. You can kind of see it's a dark line. Thank you, Councilmember Sandberg. Except that's not. I don't think that's it. I'm sorry. Maybe just go back to the black and white, and then we'll put that on there. So this is the highest ranking ones, and they're the dark lines, the really dark, thick lines. That kind of coincide. I mean, we heard, like, for example, 188th. I'm going to use my pointer, was mentioned tonight in public testimony, and that features in this high ranking with the criterion that you have laid out.
Correct.
You agree with the public comment that that's a high priority to be replaced.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
My understanding is that in the city of Seattle, like I think it was in 2007, 40% of the streets in Seattle had no sidewalks at all, or had no sidewalks at least on one side of the street. And they essentially had almost 650 miles of streets with no sidewalks in Seattle. And so they did this called the missing gap, or fill the gap, where they tried to put, I think it was like $347 million towards this to bridge it. Yeah. And at that time, they estimated the cost to be about $2 million a mile of curb, gutter, and ADA compliant sidewalks. Is that about right?
Based on our estimate, now we identify approximately 30 miles of missing sidewalks. If we are going to install only 30 miles of missing segments, we will probably need to spend $102 million. So it is based on the assumption that 30% of the
and I'm just going to stop you there. You said $102 million.
Correct.
And that would be if we filled in every missing sidewalk in the city of Bothell. So if we just said, like, you know what, we want to be 40% better than Seattle. We want to have 100% sidewalks. That would be $102 million.
Yes, based on today's dollar value. Yes.
What would the program that you've outlined up there cost? That's not 30 miles of missing sidewalks, right?
The
Exhibit B.
This one, yes. This one, Exhibit A, yes, but Exhibit B.
I'm looking at Exhibit B, which is the one which is like the highest ranking.
Exhibit B, we only show the top 25 projects based on our scoring.
And how many miles of sidewalks is that?
I don't have number on top of my head, but I can look into it.
Do we know what the number of the cost of that would be?
I can figure out the number for sure.
Because I'd be really interested in that, because I think when people understand, I think if you go to the people of Bothell and say, we want to raise your taxes by $103 million so that everywhere in the city has sidewalks, I think most people are going to say that's way too much money and I don't want to pay that. And I mean, interestingly, with the talk that we've heard of development, one of the biggest builders of new sidewalks in our city is new development. So a woman testified earlier about how when she first came to Bothell, there were dirt streets, didn't have a lot of sidewalks, and then developments came in around her and sidewalks came in. That isn't you can't fix gaps of older developed properties with that, but it is a source of new sidewalks in our communities. So I look at Exhibit B as being something that we want to get a price tag on, and I think that we want to say what does that look like for our citizens? What would that cost to do that? And then I would actually, looking at your ranking system, I would place a higher priority than 10 points on schools. I think that I think schools we have to prioritize that. And that was the other question that I know. I know this to be true, but I don't know when it started or how much it's expanded in the last couple of years. The school district is having kids walk farther and is reducing their bus service.
Yes.
If we can get numbers the next time this comes back about how much that's changed in the city of Bothell, because that that dramatically, like when you go from grade school to junior high, some kids are walking almost a full mile to get, which sounds almost like a story our grandparents would tell us, to get to a bus stop, which is oftentimes on a really, really busy road. And I'd like to know what that evolution has been, and I'd like us to ask the school district and to say, what, did you look at when you made that determination? Did you consider the condition of the roads before you made those changes? Did you notify the city of Bothell that you were going to be changing the busing? And are you prioritizing your busing in any way based on how your students have to walk to bus stops to get there? Because I think that's information that would be helpful for us, and I think it'd be helpful for those of us, like my family of children in the North Shore School District. I'd like to know that, because obviously busing is very expensive, but I think both those of us who serve on this body and those who serve on the school board want to make sure that our kids get to school safely. So those are questions that I look for. I really appreciate the work that you've done. I think, based on a very high-level glance, it appears that your criteria is sound for developing the high-ranking missing sidewalks, and I'd love to see what our price tag would be on that.
Sure.
Thank you very much for your hard work.
Councilmember Rayum and then Sandberg.
Thank you for the presentation. I look forward to this coming back as well. But just to tee off from Councilmember Lamb, so I believe that it went from a 1/4 mile to a 1 mile radius for the no bus zone. So I was wondering if we could look at, I know on one of your maps it had the radial pattern around schools at a 1/4 mile, and I was hoping we could maybe expand that to 1 mile, at least for your rating criteria.
Yeah, we actually we check the 1 mile radius, but once we increase the radius from 1/4 mile to 1 mile, basically every missing sidewalk segment receive a point.
Okay.
So in order to have a score range, so we reduce the buffer zone from 1 mile to 1/4 mile.
Okay. Thank you. That's okay. So the ADA requirements, has federal money still available to help support us with our sidewalk connections and updating our ramps so they're ADA compliant?
Yes, definitely. There are few potential grants available for application. Yes.
So when we look at the overall cost, that would probably be something we would look at, or we don't speculate on potential grants, or are those grants just consistently available to local governments to fix the ramps?
Yeah, every year or every other years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it like a very highly competitive pool, or is it?
It's very competitive. In 2014, we submit an application to TIB, Transportation Improvement Board. And so for the sidewalk programs, and they received 46 applications, and only 15 applications were selected and funded.
So it's great that you guys are talking with the school district. I do hope that we do reach out to the PTAs and the principals at those schools to get the word out that we're having community meetings about the sidewalk program.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see here. Okay, I guess one last thing that I was hoping to touch bases on, and I didn't provide this question in advance, but I understand that the police department was providing additional coverage of school zones during school coming into session and out of session. I was wondering if we can get an update on that. Are we still doing that? Are we? Because I'd like to see us be at every school at every opening and closing of the school. That would be one way to pay for a sidewalk program, is to get people a ticket for speeding through a school zone.
So when we have our traffic officers available, the focus in the morning and in the afternoon is to be at the school zones, with the exception of if there is a serious accident that they need to investigate. So that's triaged. The challenge is, of course, the number of schools we have, and as you know, most of the grade schools start at the same time, or right around the same time. So really, if you're going to spend the half hour or so during the beginning of the school rush, it's one school, maybe two, but generally one per day. So what we try to do to supplement it is to have our patrol officers, if they are not on a 911 call in the morning time in that general area, to go out and help provide visibility. So
I don't know this answer. I should probably. How many police vehicles or police units do we have that we could deploy, or that we have deployed at the beginning of a school day?
So again, the traffic unit, we have 3 officers assigned to it, though they can be pulled from that assignment to say be a field training officer for a new patrol officer. Currently, one of our traffic officers is injured. Generally, we have 3 to 4 patrol officers on the street in the daytime and in the afternoon. But again, their primary responsibility is 911 response. So if they have free time, in fact, I was just speaking to a sergeant last week to say, how often are you able to get officers out there for the school zones? And he says it varies, maybe two to 3 times a week. Again, completely dependent on 911 calls.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But we do try to work with the schools and to provide that visibility. So,
is there a possibility that would you benefit from the school principal contacting this city or the police department, letting you know if there was an incident where they have a consistent vehicle with a license plate number?
Oh, absolutely. And again, that's that relationship with the school district is very important. And in fact, I spoke just last week with I think his official title is he works security. He helps with the security issues and risk at the schools. And so we were in conversation about crossing guards, in fact. So we try to keep those lines of communication and relationships open.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember Sandberg.
I know this is a study session, but we have a couple members of the audience, I think, that would like to speak on this particular issue. Could we give them time at the podium to do so? They're a 3-minute.
We did hear from one already on the sidewalks. If there's another speaker that hasn't spoken. Are there others here that wish to speak? You do? Okay. Ma'am, if you want to come forward.
Thank you. Sorry I got here late. My children are in kindergarten and 4th grade. They go to Maywood Hills. It struck me as especially funny you said that there are some middle schoolers who have to walk almost a mile. The school district expects my kindergartner to walk a mile, or 0.095 miles, to school every morning, along a published route that has a large portion of road with no sidewalks on either side, which has 2 sidewalks or crosswalks that are clearly designated across them. One of them is along 104th, incredibly busy, especially as people are rushing to work in the morning. That is incredibly insufficient to children's safety. $103 million is a lot of money. I don't think that it's anywhere near the amount of money that one child's life is worth if they get hit. Period. I am afraid that the school district dropped the ball in a serious way in working with the city proactively and with parents and PTAs proactively to say that they were going to cut a significant amount of bus service this year, taking it from, I think, a half a mile where students are expected to walk to a full mile radius. They didn't walk the routes that they decided were the published walking routes a week before school started. It was also 2 weeks before school started that I got a notification that was listed from the 1st of July saying that my children no longer qualified for bus service due to sidewalk improvements between my house and the school. There was not a single sidewalk or any improvement between my house on 186th Street and Maywood Hills Elementary School. when I wrote a note saying, wow, could you let me know? Because you hide what the walking routes are on your site. They're buried in a FAQ. You send the notification to parents 2 months after you've written it up, and you don't in any way indicate clearly, kind of in color, where that walking route is or what the changes are that have made this safe for kindergartners to walk in the morning when it gets dark most of the year. It's rainy, and kindergartens are spazzes. Imagine most of you have children and know this well. And they came back with, well, you know, it was just that it's a mile radius now, and many places had sidewalk improvements, and maybe mine wasn't one of them. So unfortunately, the school district has left it to the city to find a solution, but I think that you can. I mean, it's finding, even if there's new signs created that post along the designated sidewalks, that they're school walking routes would be a first way to help.
Questions or comments for you?
I was
Yeah.
I was just going to say one thing. I mean, one feedback for the city is too is we're in this situation right now because the school district generally puts schools where there aren't currently sidewalks, and the policy right now, because they are looking at building new. I mean, the new high school is an area that had no sidewalks to it, and that's something to discuss with the school board as well. Is when you're citing things, do you do it in the incorporated area, or do you do it inside the city of Bothell, or do you do it where there are a lot more sidewalks than there are in the unincorporated area of Snohomish County? And so that's something that we have challenges right now within our own municipality. We have the ability to address them. When it goes to the county, when those schools are out there, a lot of times they don't have any. I mean, it's even more difficult to get those addressed than it is here.
Absolutely understand that. But within the borders of the city of Bothell, I think that you guys are empowered and do have a lot of power to go with some of the things with lighting that would light up crosswalks, with clearly painting them out, and just really making those the priority in what would be record speed time for any government to make those routes that are safe for kids. You know, for my kids, for your kids, for all of the kids that are coming, because I don't think the district is going to bring the buses back.
Councilmember Sandberg.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Can
Oh,
you
I'm
for the
so sorry.
record?
Sorry. Lead with the point first. Jessica Campbell.
Great, thank you, Jessica.
Absolutely.
I have a question. You said your kindergartner has to walk a significant distance on a road with no sidewalks. What road?
I'm down. You go up the road and you take a left and go across. I don't have my kids walk the designated walking route because there's not a sidewalk.
Right, but you listed 104th as one of the roads that they would be on.
Yep,
But
that is the next road down. So I think it's along 103rd between, what's the road that goes up past the Safeway? Oh, yeah, true enough. Figure it out. Let's see, my house is here. So the designated walking route has them come up this street here, which doesn't have sidewalks and is private anyway. So I have them go up 104th because even though it's busier.
so that's the one behind the Catholic Church? Okay.
I drove it. I walked it. I took pictures to send to the school.
I thought when they built the church, they put sidewalks on one side.
Nope. There are stretches without sidewalks.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You said you had a clarification?
I did. I had a couple of very quick clarifications for you. So you had asked if the school district considers road conditions when they make these walking maps. Jessica actually answered some of this for you. I was initially told that they did, but then when I asked, I've discovered that no, that's not actually true. They don't. It's basically a 1 mile radius. Also, I was initially told that the 1 mile radius is considered as the crow flies. The RCW for Washington states that the 1 mile should be considered along the walking route. And then calling way back, I'm sorry, about considering about crosswalks and where crosswalks are safe or not safe. The prime example, I live on 191st. You can see it on the map. Right behind the Starbucks, next to the QFC, there's a 53-unit apartment complex going in. There will be children in that school who will be going to West Hill Elementary. And they will, since there's no sidewalk on that side of 191st, they'll have two choices. They can either walk down to 527, cross the street, and then walk all the way back up the hill, adding an extra half a mile to their walking route, or they'll run across the middle of 191st. And I know what's likely to happen. But if you put in a crosswalk there, the visibility is so poor for people coming down the hill that it renders it quite a danger.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Tris, we need to get to the end of our meeting. Sorry, Andy.
Okay. Nope, that's it. Thanks. So I want to thank Rita and Jamal for their presentation, and I want you to know that I hear your concern or your explanation about the dichotomy between engineering versus enforcement, because we've had that conversation a lot. You can put a beautiful crosswalk in the road that's marvelously signaled, but there are drivers who won't pay attention to it. And we are living in a world of increasingly rude drivers. And so I think at a later date we need to have a conversation about enforcement issues, because we as council, we get concerns expressed to us from the community, and I politely respond and forward them to poor Jamal and ask him to solve a problem that the school district has created, that rude and inconsiderate drivers create. And so I put you in an uncomfortable position, and I want to let you know that I apologize for that, and I know that you're trying your best to solve an issue. That said, it seems like even if someone isn't going to necessarily stop in a restriped crosswalk because they're a rude person and they probably wouldn't have stopped regardless, I still think the city can take the opportunity to restripe the crosswalk or put in the flags. So I think I completely understand and get the enforcement versus engineering issue. I also think that there are opportunities that we can take to do some additional signage and alerting to drivers, and then always caution people that just because you have a better signed crosswalk doesn't mean you have a cloaking device and that you're going to get across safely. And then secondly, I wanted to point out that a previous speaker this evening mentioned that we have a major property selling in downtown Six Oaks, which the price tag when I looked up on the Bothell Reporter was $63 million. And that for the city equates to about $315,000 of REIT revenue, real estate excise tax revenue, that we can use on capital projects. And so it's not a lot of money. $315,000 isn't a lot of money when we think about a total price tag into the tens of millions of dollars, but it's a start. And so when that REIT revenue comes in, if the sale goes through, I'll be thinking about that in terms of one of the mechanisms that we can use to fund a sidewalk program, along, to provide matching money for grants or what have you. So with that, it's getting late, and I'll just save my comments for the next time we discuss.
Great, thank you. Steve, are you looking for direction from council this evening, or is this more just a presentation?
I think we wanted to open the discussion, make sure we heard issues. I think we got some input on scoring, which is also what we want to do. We're going to go to the public. We're going to hear what they have to say at the open houses. We'll come back. We'll tell you what we heard. And hopefully at that time, then we have some recommendations. And yeah.
Good. Number for what?
Steve, was one of the things that you'll come back to us with the cost of Exhibit B?
Yes, we can do that. I mean, that's part of the whole thing we're trying to do is inventory everything.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think Exhibit B is the top 25.
Top 24.
Yeah.
Looks like
so, and that's
6 miles if I have a perfect counting here on my 8.5 by 11 sheet. But thank you so much for your presentation.
impressive.
You put a lot of thought into it. We could all tell, and help to educate us. And I'm sure as you go out, a lot of education for the public, and will be helpful for everybody involved. So I'd like to turn the floor over to our city manager, who I think has had a spectacular week with 10 to 12 years worth of work, just continuing to see that dream and vision come to life. Want to turn the floor over to you, Bob.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And just without fanfare, this is your last meeting in this chambers. Your next meeting will be on October or November 3rd. Will be in the new building. Next week, it will just be an orientation of the council chambers and of the facility for you. But Mayor, as you mentioned, we had a very positive week for the most part last week with TV media in terms of promoting Bothell and all the great things that has been happening in the downtown revitalization. So I hope that you feel very good by all that and all the work that the council's done over the last decade.
Well, thank you so much for being a collaborative person and bringing a lot of that vision together through 50 people of the Downtown Visionary Group and continued groups through there. So excited to be together. Thank you. Anybody else for the good of the cause tonight? No? Then
Thanks.
for the last time, we are adjourned in here.